नन्दिनि नन्दितमेदिनि विश्वविनोदिनि नन्दिनुते गिरिवरविन्द्यशिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिनि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिणि दितिश्रुतरोषिणि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. The audio is coming fine, right? Yeah, the audio is coming fine. Let's just change this a little more. Okay, so today we are going to look at three debates between Shashi Tharoor and others. Three of them hold a special significance for me in three different ways, based on my observations on the debate. The first one we are going to discuss is between Shashi Tharoor and Harsh Madhusudan, because there I think Shashi Tharoor faced his biggest and strongest and most impactful, forceful defeat. He was absolutely destroyed. He was nowhere to be found in the debate. Harsh Madhusudan quipped back with insanely tough, articulate, witty, and heavy, deep responses with each and everything that Shashi Tharoor said. Next, after that, we will check out Shashi Tharoor's debate with J. Sai Deepak. That's special for me because that was the first time I ever checked out anything by J. Sai Deepak. It came up on my feed randomly when I was first going through Sanjeev Sanyal's books and a bit of Kushal Mehra and stuff. And third will be Shashi Tharoor versus Vikram Sampath at India Today Conclave 2022, where that's very significant, I find, because Shashi Tharoor there basically admitted that Congress, in a way he admitted that Congress was making up history and omitting things deliberately in the interest of nation building. So these three debates are the ones we will check out today for these three different kinds of reasons, for these three kinds of speciality that these three debates have. Anit Dash, keep a monthly interacting session. Yeah, debate between Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Yes. She solely focuses his arguments on Indian caste system, but that's not what he did in the debate with Shashi Tharoor. Okay, let's start.
Very specific areas where India may change
Why isn't the audio
dramatically
coming?
over the next 25 years. Joining us now
There's
are
no audio,
two
right?
very special guests, Dr.
Oh,
Shashi Tharoor.
I'm sorry, मेरा headphone का volume कम किया हुआ है. Yeah.
Congressman, author, public intellectual, diplomat. He's got a very long CV. And Harsh Madhusudan, author, investor, economist. Appreciate both of you joining us as we look at two sides, possibly right, left, and center. Give them a very big hand. As I said, we'll divide it into four clear segments. The first one, I'm going to be provocative right at the very outset. By 2047, will India become a Hindu rashtra with a completely new constitution to the one that we had in 1950? Shashi, Tharoor, why don't you kick off with that?
Well, I think clearly it's part of the agenda of many of those in the ruling circles of our country. The truth is that the constitution we have established a certain idea of India, which is what we always refer to, one in which all citizens are equal, whatever your color, your religion, your caste, your creed, where you were born, what language you speak. If you're a citizen of India, your rights were equal. If you belong to a religion other than that professed by the majority, you could nonetheless profess your own religion and propagate it. All of this is provided for in the constitution. And as you know, this constitution was rejected and decried by those today we would call of the Hindutva persuasion. They argued from the very start that this was an Anglophile vision of India. From their point of view, India was a pristine Hindu state.
Oh shit, yeah, I forgot to unmute my mic. Yeah. So I was saying that the devil is in the details, that propagation of religion. As if Savarkar or the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution said anything differently in terms of giving all citizens of India, treating them as individuals and giving them equal rights and stuff. As if there was anything, any debate between Congress and Hindu Mahasabha on those topics. But Shashi Tharoor mentioned propagation of religion. There we have to be obviously more careful, because if you do geopolitics in the garb of propagation of religion, then we have to discuss how, the whys and the hows of it, the logistics, the money trail, paper trail behind those propagations, innocent little propagations, and discussion, exchange of ideas in the marketplace of ideas, etc. So there, of course, we will have to look at it in other ways as a national security issue. But anyway, then he goes on to say that see, the other side, the Hindu Mahasabha people or the right-wingers of those days, they had decried this constitution to be Anglophile and stuff, but not on these topics. The topics he just mentioned, that equal rights for everyone, etc., that was there in the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution as well.
And every non-Hindu here was either a guest or an interloper, a bandit. And from their point of view, that entire...
No, Nandish, to be fair to Shashi Tharoor here, he's saying that propagation of religion is also a nice thing to do. But how? There we have to come to some consensus to prevent geopolitical warfare.
The Hindus of this country to throw these others out or relegate them to second-class citizenship. Now, the idea has been modified over many years.
Whoever said this? Who the fuck? Okay, I don't know if some ancient RSS ideologue said this, but not Savarkar, not the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution.
Of ideological debate and contestation within the Hindutva Sangh Parivar, but the idea at core remains exactly this, that we should be a Hindu Rashtra, a state by and for the Hindus, and Hindus defined as people whose motherland, fatherland, and holy land are this particular country. Now, this notion excludes obviously everybody who's not a Hindu.
See, this is called nitpicking and creating a manifesto that's taught to kids in the social science departments even today. So he takes one side of the argument on a different context from Savarkar, that yeah, it's your motherland, holy land, fatherland, etc. And on the other topic, he says, he randomly makes up that yes, see, we stand for equal rights for all, as if just because you say this means that you don't stand for equal rights for all, which is not something Savarkar ever said.
Sikh or Buddhist or Jain. Otherwise, so those are the four whose holy land is also India. For everyone else, you are going to live here on sufferance and on the terms that will be decreed by the Hindutva leaders. So when they say things like, well, we don't mind if you want to worship towards Mecca, but you better...
Nandish is pointing out something interesting, that Ambedkar harmed LGBTQ by keeping criminalization of Section 377. But similar things go on even today. Let's say marijuana, criminalization of marijuana, or the illegalities surrounding it. So the sellers and the poor consumers of marijuana, what are their castes? Do you think any Brahman Boito Kaisto elite commie stoner guy in Kolkata ever gets arrested for getting stoned? Who are the people who are usually going to get arrested for being in that world? It's all lower caste people.
Declare yourself to be a Hindu Mohammedan or a Hindu Christian,
Yeah.
that already is a transformation that others are going to find difficult to accept. So to my mind...
No, it means that reciprocity will be a non-negotiable. Reciprocity of respect.
That's the direction in which the country is heading. But you ask, will there be a new constitution? I think that's easier said than done. I don't think it's going to be that easy to rewrite a constitution, the very constitution by which everyone in the government today has sworn an oath and which is upheld, whose basic structure has been upheld by successive Supreme Courts. But what the government has been able to do is, frankly, ignore some of these provisions of the constitution, as when the Prime Minister goes off and conducts a Bhumi Puja at Ayodhya, or when he indeed does a consecration of the laying of the first markers for the new parliament building. It's not in the constitution, and certainly it can be said to even go beyond the constitution in finding the head of government performing a religious function for an institution belonging to a secular state. But if they can do that without changing the constitution, will they need to change it, Raji?
No, before I come to you, Harsh, just to get this right, the constitution has been amended on several occasions, including the word secularism, which in itself was inserted into the constitution, and for 75 years, the Nehruvian vision of secularism has prevailed over other competing ideas. I'm asking you, as we look to 2047, do you believe that Nehruvian vision of secularism will increasingly be relegated into the pages of history books, and through the constitution amendment, we will have, by 2047, a new vision of an Indian secular republic?
The word secular didn't make us secular. We are a secular country and society for thousands of years, and on top of that, our secularism is already enshrined in the constitution without using that word. Otherwise, how do you have the right to worship? How do you have the right to profess religion? How do you
And how does Savarkar end up saying it from the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution?
have the right to propagate religion? All of these imply that the state is neutral about your religion.
Then why did you need to put the word secularism then? If it was inherently secular, if it was implicitly secular.
It's clearly at odds with the notion that we will be the land of one set of people, the Hindu Rashtra. And therefore, it seems to me you can take the word secular out and still remain secular.
Yes,
I absolutely agree.
Which exactly points to the fact that secularism was added pointlessly just to give off a signal to some people that this is how we will go about regarding Hinduism, and this is how we'll go about regarding all the other religions, all the non-dharmic panths.
With Shashi, the word secular did not make us secular. The Hindu majority made us secular. If you look at India, there are two Punjabs. They are not together. Indian Punjab is very happily with Tamil Nadu, and Indian Bengal is very happily with Gujarat. But the two Punjabs are not together, and the two Bengals are not together. Why is it that? That is because India has...
What a brilliant point. And the imagery it creates in your mind. This is how you drive home your point. This is masterclass in debating. He tells you a story with this argument. He makes you visualize things. Just today, I was reminded of this point, that why am I finding so many things in agreement with someone called Hindu Vichardhara Didi here on our comment section, who has a YouTube channel of her own, and not some guy in Bangladesh sitting a few kilometers from West Bengal? Why then? What's that based on?
Always been a Hindu Rashtra. The difference is between Rashtra and Rajya, between nation and state. And the question is, how much does the constitution reflect it or should reflect it? And that's a legitimate debate to have. But India has always been a Hindu Rashtra. As Sri Aurobindo said in his Uttarpara speech, that Sanatan Dharma, that for all of us, is nationalism, just before he retired to a life of spirituality in Pondicherry. So it depends how you define the word Hindu Rashtra. But in a very broad, pun intended Catholic sense, small c Catholic sense, it has always been a Hindu Rashtra. Now on Hindutva, you mentioned about at the sufferance of the majority. The person who actually coined the term, the person who popularized the term, Veer Savarkar, he was very clear that everybody will have equal individual rights in this free Hindustan. In fact, he went to the extent of saying that we might even have proportional representation.
And the way you know that Shashi Tharoor was not being completely honest with his arguments is because just about 2-3 years before this debate, he said those same things, and Deepak there again corrected him. That's how I found out that Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution was a pretty liberal one. That those rights to practice your religion, faith on the basis of your choice, and you will not be discriminated on the basis of your caste, creed, gender, etc. All that was in the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution. This fact was being pointed out by Deepak in his debate with Shashi Tharoor about 2-3 years before this debate, and then Shashi Tharoor says this once again. as if he could have forgotten such a significant point. So Harsh Madhusudan reminds him, obviously, but so you see, debates are not for convincing the opponent. Debates are for making a fool out of your opponent so that you convince a few people in the audience. So Shashi Tharoor obviously knew the truth, because if even let's assume that he did not know that the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution had those things. Let's assume, just for honesty's sake, just for debate's sake, that yes, he might not have ever read the Hindu Mahasabha constitution, even though he's such an expert in Indian history, or he's an expert in the history of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, pretty much, and still he didn't know that, apparently. So even after not knowing, when J.S. Deepak does remind him, he doesn't think of that point at all after going out of the debate room, ever, until 2-3 years later. Harsh Madhusudan has to remind him again. How is that possible? He's just playing to the crowd. He is in this debate only to convince some other people. And if some other people get convinced of the fact that, oh my God, yes, you see, these Hindu right-wingers are such evil people that they would not give those rights to minorities, etc. They might be convinced, but the moment then, if Harsh Madhusudan says that no, that's not the case, some of them will therefore immediately shift to Harsh Madhusudan's side and think that Shashi Tharoor is full of shit. And some of them will think that no, maybe Harsh Madhusudan is making things up, or maybe yes, Savarkar might have said this for face value lip service, he had other evil intentions anyway, etc. They will think of those things. But Shashi Tharoor managed to get some audience support by just completely lying out of his teeth knowingly.
At one point in the parliament and all cultural autonomy. So the person who actually popularized the term, we should be, decent enough to take it at the face value. It is the so-called Hindu right. I think right and left does not really apply to India, which is actually perfectly fine with secularism, that is religion-neutral personal laws, religion-neutral educational institutions, and it is the so-called secularists who want Muslim men to have 4 wives, at least legally, who are okay with polygamy for some and not for other. I mean, for Acharya Kriplani, during the Hindu Code Bill debate, told Nehru on his face that you are bringing monogamy for Hindus. Take it from me, the Muslims are ready to have it. You're not brave enough to do it. So let us not use straw men to take the debate in the wrong direction.
You just raised that straw man, Harsh, yourself. Just 2 things very quickly. When you speak of Hindus as a nation, quoting Aurobindo, and when you quote Savarkar, by the way, said in 1937 as president of the Hindu Mahasabha that India has 2 nations, the Hindus and the Muslims, which is the words that were echoed.
Sir Syed Ahmed Khan said it before that. Before that, Syed Ahmed Barilvi said it, and before that, the concepts of Darul Islam and Darul Harb were already there in Islamic texts.
3 years later by Jinnah and Lahore. So the fact is that this notion
Shashi Tharoor definitely knows the facts I'm talking about.
of nationhood is an exclusive one. It excludes those who do not subscribe to the notion of a Hindu identity.
Was Savarkar not proven correct by partition? I mean, let us ask that honestly.
Well, I think
Lahore is not in India. My grandmother was born there. My wife's grandmother grew up in Bangladesh. That's not part of India last I checked. It is a reality. It's a lived reality that those parts of the Indian subcontinent where Hindu majority stopped are no longer India. Perry Anderson, an academic, once attacked Nehru from the left, said wherever the Hindu majority stops, AFSPA begins. And Indian secularism is nothing but a version of Hindu confessionalism. He was attacking Nehru from the left, saying that Nehru was a crypto-Hindutva figure. So it really, and remember, Indian Union Muslim League, All India Muslim League, very much saw Nehru and Gandhi as Hindu figures. And Patel famously said in his speech, just days before...
Oh, Harsh Madhusudan gave... See, Shashi Tharoor is not getting any breathing space. He's drowning and there's like 2-3 waves coming on top of him over and over. एक पॉइंट का आर्ग्यूमेंट काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट सोचने का टाइम नहीं मिल रहा है. हर्ष मधुसूदन is going on bombarding him with counter argument after counter argument after counter argument, and I don't know why Harsh Madhusudan didn't counter him by pointing those things out, that Savarkar was not the one who brought this up, that the 2-nation theory. Maybe it wasn't that bit of a common knowledge when this debate was happening. It became much more common knowledge after these debates happened because of people like J.S. Deepak mainly. But and these points, see, where is Shashi Tharoor going to breathe even? Let's see. Doipan is saying India Bharat Pakistan book gives some of the answers, right? Oi points are counter arguments ki kichu ache. Yes, which points? সবকটার কাউন্টার আর্গুমেন্ট ইন্ডিয়া ভারত পাকিস্তানে আছে, অ্যান্ড এভরি বেঙ্গলি মাস্ট রিড ইন্ডিয়া ভারত পাকিস্তান, স্পেশালি বিকজ ইটস অলমোস্ট 60%, 70% about just Bengal only.
Before Gandhi was murdered by. And remember, Indian Union Muslim League, All India Muslim League, very much saw Nehru and Gandhi as Hindu.
Yeah, this is an important point. The Muslim side always saw Congress as the Hindu side. Congress never wanted to be the Hindu side, but went to Hindus to get votes, and even tried to play off their Hindu devoutness and religiosity as well, but never officially claimed to represent Hindu interests.
And Patel famously said in a speech just days before Gandhi was murdered by Godse in January 1948 in Kolkata that what ek din mein kya badal gaya ki sare Muslim League wale Congress ban gaye. Congress was the large church, again pun not intended, Hindu party.
Big tent.
It was the big tent Hindu party.
No, but the fact is in 1947, Pakistan decided to become an Islamic.
He did not respond. He had no responses. And also, for people who don't know, people like Deepak Bhattacharya, who might not have read India Bharat Pakistan as of yet, Congress was supposed to be the safety valve, remember? It was created by Alan Octavian Hume, a bureaucrat, to prevent another 1857-like situation. कि प्रेशर इतना मत डाल दो कि ये लोग पूरा बवाल कर दे हमारे साथ और हमारे लोगों को मारना शुरू कर दे. एक नेगोशिएशन, एक बैक चैनल खुला रखो जहां पे लोग आके अपना ग्रीवांस दे सके और हम भी उसको कंट्रोल्ड ऑपोजिशन की तरह ट्रीट कर सके. द एग्जैक्ट फ्रेज यूज्ड वाज सेफ्टी वाल्व फॉर कांग्रेस, क्रिएटेड बाय एलन ऑक्टेवियन ह्यूम for the specific reason that it will be a negotiation spot for grievance-ridden Indians, and we will keep them in total control and check.
Republic of Pakistan, and we very clearly, and India didn't. Shashi Tharoor has been attacked by his own party at times for saying that India will never become a Hindu Pakistan.
That's right.
And you still believe that therefore there is a distinction, a firm distinction between the route that Pakistan chose and the route that India did. I ask you, looking ahead to 2047, do you believe India will move?
Yeah, for statements like these, we will still have some respect for Shashi Tharoor forever. That he said that India will never be a Hindu Pakistan. But also, there's an interview that nobody knows about. I stumbled upon it because I used to be an avid politics follower for all my life. So when I was in college, I stumbled upon an interview of Dr. Shashi Tharoor in Pakistan. He was being interviewed by someone called Moeed Pirzada, and I could not find that interview anywhere today. I tried to find it. I tried to do reaction videos of it. If someone can find it again, let me know and send me the link in Instagram. But there, Shashi Tharoor had said something insane, because that's the time when Congress was in power, and Moeed Pirzada, the Pakistani anchor, kept on pushing him to say that India is like on the brink of becoming a Hindu fascist state at any moment and stuff. Shashi Tharoor told Moeed Pirzada that no, where is Hindu fascism? And even if you look at Gujarat, I'm quoting Shashi Tharoor here, okay? I remember that sentence almost verbatim. He said that if you look at even Gujarat, after the riot, nothing significant has happened. Muslims live happily in Gujarat. 2002 riot onwards. He said that's the characteristic of India. It will never go that route.
Move towards a point where on August 15, 2047, we will be declared as a Hindu Republic of India.
There's a struggle for India's soul going on right now. There's certainly people in and close to the ruling establishment who would like to see India officially declared a Hindu Rashtra. And there are people outside who resist that for precisely the reason that...
Yeah, some people do want the official declaration, but they are not clear on what the fuck the official declaration would entail. What would it entail? What new stuff do you want? What isn't there in law today that can help Hindus, that is that you will require to give a new name and create? You just need to eliminate some laws.
That Harsh mentioned. If you equate your nationalism with Hinduism, what happens to those who don't consider themselves Hindu, but who consider themselves Indian and nationalist and patriotic? What happens to them? What happens to 180 million Indians?
What happens to them is what Savarkar said will happen to them, that they'll have equal rights before the law. The state will be secular.
Indian Muslims or 28 million Indian Christians. The truth of the matter at the end of the day is, you either have a notion of Indian civilization as exclusive or have a notion of Indian civilization as inclusive. My notion, which indeed you're right, is Nehru's notion as well, is that ours is a civilization to which all sorts of streams have
What
contributed.
is that civilization? It is the Hindu civilization.
Into which various streams have flowed.
Exactly.
So it starts.
Yes, and they pretty much became Hindus or did not ever fuck with Hindus. There's just someone who is hell-bent on fucking with Hindus.
So obviously with what is totally indigenous, but we have not been immune.
Radha
Look at what
Krishna.
you're wearing, Bhai Which Hindu invented these clothes?
I think Hinduism is universal.
No, Anidash, I'm a big sucker for conspiracy theories, but this one would be too much of a conspiracy theory. This is, I think, where people like Rajiv Sardesai and that entire establishment started screwing up. They lost the ball. They were caught fucking napping. पूरा ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस में इन लोगों का सब गाड़ मारा गया. ठीक है. I honestly believe he called Harsh Madhusudan, who was not that significant big of a gigantic name like Shashi Tharoor. He brought Harsh Madhusudan because he thought he would not be able to stand up to Shashi Tharoor. He thought Shashi Tharoor is going to win easily the debate, or was going to be coming across as the giant in the debate. Rajiv Sardesai, I think, got surprised the fuck out of his brains because of Harsh Madhusudan's responses.
I think Hinduism is not just Indian.
There you are. So in that case,
I could do no better than quote Shashi himself. He says, Hinduism has no one founder, no one prophet, no one holy book, no one God, no one way of praying. He actually believes in Hindu exceptionalism. I am arguing his point of view. I'm simply saying you have to defend. You have to defend.
देखो कैसे डिबेट करते हैं. देखो क्यों सब कुछ पढ़ना चाहिए. देखो.
And Hinduism, you can quote.
अब बोलो ऑडियंस में जो लोग, ठीक है, शशि थरूर तो कन्विंस नहीं हुआ. ऑडियंस में कौन किस साइड में कन्विंस होगा ये देख के.
You can quote Karl Popper if you're not okay with Savarkar. I can quote Karl Popper, Open Society and Its Enemies, saying that sometimes you have to stop tolerating the intolerant.
कोई ब्रीदिंग स्पेस नहीं है. शशि थरूर 1 पॉइंट दे रहा है, उसका 6 काउंटर आर्गुमेंट दे रहा है हर्ष मधुसूदन इन द एंटायर डिबेट.
Let's stop being abstract. There are people who are ostensibly being oppressed, going out on the street saying, Sar tan se juda, if you disrespect the Prophet. And then we have comparisons of Hindu India with Nazi Germany. I don't remember Jews going out on the street saying they will go and behead Gentiles. So let us be very clear that this is nothing but gaslighting people who are actually being scared. And not just Hindus, liberal Muslims, reformist Muslims, Muslims who came out and said, let's be for free speech. Either during the Charlie Hebdo case or during the Nupur Sharma case, they were beaten by Muslims, and both BJP and non-BJP governments let them go and rot in jail, or they had to go underground. It is a collective failure. I'm not arguing on behalf of a party. The Indian state has let go of the minority within the minority, the liberal, reformist Muslim, however rare that creature may be. Maybe it's not so rare, maybe they just don't speak out much for understandable reasons. And unfortunately, the Congress party or the broader opposition has made peace with obscurantist elements in Indian minorities, which, by the way, are the global majorities. Indians forget that we are not all the world. We are the last surviving, quote-unquote, pagan civilization. Even the Chinese are officially communist. The entire world has been at least converted to Christianity or Islam, including Southern Africa in the last 100 years. I wrote an essay on Dharmatva, which Shashi promoted, just like he promoted my book, co-authored with Rajiv, A New Idea of India. One of the very few people, I must say, in Indian politics who actually debates with all people. So thank you, Shashi.
Yeah, Tipu Sultan's book, though, the testimonial on the cover is by Dr. Shashi Tharoor, I think, as far as I remember. Then Sanjeev Sanya's 2008 book, Indic Renaissance, testimonial on the cover page is from Dr. Shashi Tharoor. So he's obviously probably the best in the lot of the non-right-wing intellectual academia, but he does try to do shenanigans, but आजकल उनका shenanigans effective नहीं होता है, वही है difference.
For that. And I really believe that we cannot understand India without looking at the world at large. And global Islam is going through a crisis. Indian Islam is only one section of that. Since the 1970s, there has been a massive increase in Islamic radicalization. You can go to Kerala, you can go to any part, and what you would not see earlier, you see right now in dresses. Am I wrong, Shashi?
No, I've written about this, so I know what you're talking about. But the truth is,
and you're allied with IUML in your UDF.
In a way,
एक भी हर्ष मधुसूदन के एक काउंटर का कोई मतलब दूसरा फिर से काउंटर का काउंटर शशि थरूर के पास एक भी नहीं है, अभी तक नहीं हुआ. ठीक है, 12 मिनट हो गए, एक भी हर्ष मधुसूदन का कोई भी काउंटर नहीं हुआ. राजीव सरदेसाई goes on changes the subject. from which year was it this? 2022. Aha, the year where probably most people in India became Hindutwadis.
Somewhere the crisis in a way of the Congress party is being almost equated with the crisis of Indian secularism. Today's a decent day. Today one of your leaders, your sort of so-called Kashmiri Muslim face, Ghulam Nabi Azad, has left your party, left your party angrily. So I think what has happened, it appears almost that the decline of the Congress, which many believe by 2047 may not even be around, or maybe a much weakened force, leads people to believe that will we, in a way, continue to embrace the Congress's vision of secularism, or are we now moving to a more BJPI's Hindutva view of our constitutional republic? I think that's what I'm asking. In the next 25 years, do you see those forces getting momentum as you and your party get weakened?
As I say, the Congress view of secularism is actually by and large the majority Indian view. And let's not forget that
it got warped by vote bank politics
in the polls.
It got
That's also the view of Savarkar and Hindu Mahasabha.
It got warped by vote bank politics of majority communalism and minority. You ran with the secular hare and hunted with the communal hound.
You know, I've been in Congress.
अरे सी इन लोगों के वो बंगाली में बोलते हैं ना पेटे बुद्धिया चाहिए, इन लोगों के पेट में है विद्या, अगर बाहर लाना चाहे तो कभी कभी बाहर निकल ही आता है, बाकी समय छुपा के रखते हैं कौमी चुतियापा करने के लिए.
13 years, and in these 13 years, I have never had any truck with communalism by any faith. I have not hesitated to criticize majority communalism, and I have not hesitated to criticize minority communalism. My view, very simply, is we've got to live together. I mean, I am a deep bhakt of Vivekanand, who taught us very simply that Hinduism is not just about tolerance; it is about acceptance. The tolerant guy is basically very patronizing.
Also ready to fight for Hinduism. You remember.
And see, Shashi, the next debate we are going to check out after this, which is Desai Deepak versus Shashi Tharoor. There also, Desai Deepak gave the counter to this. Shashi Tharoor must have remembered the point and then went ahead and said this point anyway, because he's not always an honest debater.
Right? Yeah, yeah. If you try to forcibly convert me, I'll go and actually fight you.
No, but what is the idea of Hinduism he's talking about? He said, I mean, what is tolerance? Tolerance says, I have the truth, you are in error, but I will indulge you in your right to be wrong.
Believe in mutual respect.
Whereas, exactly, acceptance says, I believe I have the truth, you believe you have the truth, I will respect your truth, please respect my truth.
Hinduism is exceptional in that way, and therefore, to preserve the Hindu character of Indian civilization.
So that's not just Congress secularism, boss, that's what our civilization, in my...
Shashi Tharoor, usually a very polite and civilized debater, went on interrupting, although Harsh was also trying to interrupt, but he did not let Harsh finish his sentence at all, because he knew again he had screwed up. Harsh was going on a tangent which would have buried Shashi Tharoor for the next 5-10 minutes again.
My view is all about. But if you have a different view that says that you reduce the Hindu identity to that of the British football hooligan, and you say if you don't support my team, I'll bash you on the head. That's not Hindu.
But Harsh, as we end this segment, the question arises, is this going to become more and more of what is described as a majoritarian country? As you move ahead.
और उसके अगले साल डॉक्टर कौशिक गंगोपाध्याय ने दिखा दिया point by point with economical and almost a mathematical analysis that why majoritarianism, the idea of majoritarianism does not apply to Hindus at all.
Where, in a sense, we have a parliament.
I'll answer you that very simply.
Where we have a parliament, for example, where the party ruling the country with more than 400 MPs between the two houses doesn't have a single Muslim MP today. Now, does that worry you? Should we be worried?
या मेरिट पे कुछ नहीं होगा, हमको टोकनिज्म करना है, फिर बोलेंगे कि नहीं आप लोगों ने तो ट्राइबल वीपी रखा सिर्फ टोकनिज्म के लिए. तो भाई राजदीप सरदेसाई जो डिमांड कर रहा है कि मुस्लिम एमपी क्यों नहीं है, व्हाई डू मुस्लिम्स नीड रिप्रेजेंटेशन only at the hands of Muslims, then why do they love Rahul Gandhi so much? So how can they have an alliance with Dalits then? So or Vajrayani Buddhists, Navayani Buddhists. So what Rajiv should ideally ask for is that an able man represent the Muslim dominant regions of India. Why a Muslim specifically has to be in the parliament from the party?
The fact is, we have one of the largest Muslim populations in the world, and somewhere or the other, every day there is a dog whistle or some element of demonization. Will that increase, intensify going into 2047?
First of all, the demonization is both ways. Like Sartan Sajuda, I just recounted to you. So it's not one way. Secondly, India is the only democracy worth its name between Israel and South Korea. Again, it's not a coincidence that it's a Hindu majority in this part of the world. Now, to answer your question, I fully agree and I'm worried. I want to see a strong opposition. However, to see a strong opposition, the Congress or whatever replaces the Congress will have to give ground on the Uniform Civil Code, on 370. The Congress party has still not accepted the abrogation of 370. Kejriwal was smart enough, at least to rhetorically accept it. Now, if today I, as a median voter who's not a member of any political party, by the way, I cannot trust the Indian National Congress to preserve and defend the Indian national interests despite their massive Hori lineage, because currently the people who are on charge, they just don't inspire that confidence.
But beyond the Congress and BJP, Shashi Tharoor, Uniform Civil Code, inevitably, in the next 25 years, do you believe that a Uniform Civil Code is almost inevitable, given the fact that if you want equality of citizenship, have equal laws? Why should we, 1950s
Directive
India,
principles of the
where
Constitution.
there were concerns post-partition that Nehru may have expressed, which is why a particular direction was taken by the Indian Republic, is very different from India in 2022. Do you believe a uniform civil code is an idea whose time has come?
Nehru said himself it's a very desirable objective. But he also said you've got to take people along with you. He had so many difficulties passing the Hindu code.
So how many years are we going to wait for people to come along? Come along का definition क्या है? हम क्या survey करेंगे of each and every Muslim? How will we know if they are coming along or not? On general public social media rhetoric, they are not coming along. तो नहीं होगा.
Code bill. You remember Ambedkar resigning over it. The fact is that when reforming religious personal law is the most difficult thing in a traditional hidebound society, change comes gradually.
But you believe it should.
He said 370 was a temporary provision. What we objected to, I spoke for the Congress and the Lok Sabha, was the way in which this was done and the manner in which it was conducted and the precedent.
It reminds me of St. Augustine, who said, God give me chastity, but not yet. The Congress's position on the Common Civil Code, the secular civil code, and I don't think the Congress is a party of secularism. It's a very bastardized version of pseudo-secularism. Sorry to be very clear. Panth nirpeksh is the dharmic sense of secularism, not dharma nirpeksh. You cannot be neutral to dharma. You have to be panth nirpeksh. You're not panth nirpeksh if you have different laws. Show me the religion, I'll show you the law.
Oh.
That is not secular anywhere in the world. Why is the Congress party...
See, why I like this debate most of all among the ones where Shashi Tharoor lost is because the art of rhetoric that Madhusudan applied here, कि ये counter arguments तो हमको सबको पता है, but how many of us or even the other stalwarts in the Indian right wing today, how many of us would have been able to give these exact same arguments with the same kind of storytelling and creating triggering the imagery in your head in front of such an audience, with such an anchor, in such a channel, under the lights, in front of an audience, okay? यहाँ पे जो art of जो एक performance है debate का, उसमें हर्ष मधुसूदन जो सिक्सर के बाद सिक्सर मारे जा रहा है, उसके लिए I like this debate the most because it leaves the opponent flabbergasted. He goes absolutely speechless. His brain is going through an aneurysm.
Either opposing it or Shashi, when he has to speak in more global audiences, said we agree with it, but we won't do it just yet. Why don't you get ahead of the train so that people say, wait a second, this Congress party we can trust. And by the way, the Indian Muslims will vote for the party who can get moderate Hindus. Because if you become the de facto Muslim League, even the Muslims will not vote for you because you're not electable.
Yeah.
That's the only way to actually have a strong opposition in the country. For your own survival, you must actually become electable.
So Shashi,
I've won my last 3 elections. Okay,
Shashi, you agree with Nehru when he said a uniform civil code.
Madhusudan says because of the demographics of Kerala. Ish.
Code is desirable.
Yeah.
But do you also agree that therefore in 2022 we need to have a relook at it and maybe look at it over the next 25 years as one of the objectives to try and build a more inclusive society, have equal laws?
It shouldn't be a majoritarian code. It should be one that takes into account the views of...
What the fuck is a majoritarian code? Uniform civil code का बात हो रहा है, एक लॉ सबके लिए, उसमें बोला नहीं ये majoritarian code है. अच्छा तो uniformity ही majoritarian है तो therefore हिंदू महासभा में सब equal rights दिए थे सबको जो तुमको पसंद नहीं आए.
All religions. I mean, there have been attempts. Sure. They go. You come from Goa. There's a uniform civil code there.
So it's already done.
See how that worked. Let's say get elements that work. There are elements of Portuguese law there that won't apply in the rest of India. Similarly, now we understand there's an experiment being attempted in Uttarakhand, but Uttarakhand doesn't have too many minorities. The challenge is going to be to take the interests of all groups in a diverse and plural society into.
गोवा में माइनॉरिटीज है कि नहीं? किस तरह के माइनॉरिटीज है? वहां पे यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड का है मान लिए. उत्तराखंड में तो एक्सक्यूज है कि माइनॉरिटीज है ही नहीं, इसलिए शायद मान लिए होंगे. गोवा में कैसे चल रहा है?
Account. That's all we're saying.
Hindu code has already been constantly reformed. Increasingly there is gender equality in inheritance, in marriage, in all matters.
Supreme Court decisions.
And I fully support it. And the BJP, which is in power, has not once tried to reverse anything introduced by Nehru, Ambedkar, Supreme Court. If at all, they've gone the more quote-unquote progressive direction, saying we should have minimum age of marriage is 21, including for women. But the problem is society cannot run in parallel tracks. You cannot have Indian Muslim girls being allowed to marry at 13 because they've achieved puberty, because that's what Fatwa Alamgari says as per the Supreme Court. But Indian Hindu girls can only marry at 21. Similarly, if I support, for example, going as opinion changes, same-sex marriage, but not under the Hindu marriage law, under a uniform civil code. Let consenting adults live a life of dignity. But you cannot put all the reform on the Hindus and say, by the way, a 13-year-old Muslim girl can marry if she wants, and that husband can have 3 more wives. That is the law of the land, whether or not it happens.
And there's no... The sentence that Harsh just said here actually doesn't even apply in English grammar. Okay, the 13-year-old can marry if she wants. She can't marry even if she wants. There's no want for a 13-year-old girl because she's a minor in the eyes of law, English common law, etc., or like laws like ours, who are the descendants of English common law. She can't consent. There's no want in terms of a 13-year-old girl. She has to be under the guidance of her parents, which means her parents are agreeing that yes, she is going to be married away.
On the ground, I agree. We should not demonize our Muslim brothers and sisters. Most of them do not actually do this on the ground. If that is the reality, then why it's even more important for the Congress to get ahead and say, let me take ownership of this reform. What is stopping you?
Shashi Tharoor is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea because,
which one are you?
He's a Congress politician. He's a Congress politician and a public intellectual, and sometimes those two self-images tend to collide.
No, so I'm not a Congress spokesman.
When you spoke of a uniform civil code, I could see the smile on Shashi, almost in agreement, but at the same time worried that what will my party say? Will I be the next in line to leave the party? Should that happen?
I'm not a party spokesman. You asked me here to speak in my own capacity, and I'm doing that.
Yeah,
so I'm telling you what I believe.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to know that you do believe that a uniform civil code is desirable, but it should be done through a process of consultation.
Exactly.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, I think your party will live with that.
Thank you for the
I think he should do a palace coup in the party and take over the party. I see him as an excellent shadow prime minister.
And after a few months after this debate, Shashi Tharoor actually tried doing that and failed miserably. Was made to fail miserably. Shenanigans were done against him. Nuts and bolts were moved against him to prevent him from becoming the head of the party.
If not exactly prime minister yet.
Should I be asking that question? Yeah.
Can we move on to the idea of India?
Whether Shashi Tharoor wants to contest as a future leader of the party, it's been asked before. But linked to that, just since we are looking ahead to 2047, one more fear that is expressed is that by 2047, we could either be a single party autocracy or we could be a country where, for example, the southern states are increasingly anxious that they are not getting their due in terms of the economic benefits being equally distributed across the state. They are the major tax-paying states of this country. They are the economically progressive states, but they're actually losing out when you talk of fiscal federalism. Do you believe we will be more unified come 2047, or do you see still the...
देखो नितिन का सब कमेंट मैं सीरियसली नहीं ले सकता हूँ because in some comments he just abuses and stuff and this is absolutely insane thing that makes me want to use abusive words and stuff. But I would like to tell him here that why are Tharoor, Deepak, etc. from the same creed, etc., upper caste, etc. तो जब कोई lower caste या मिडिल कास्ट गाय आके ऐसे चीजें बोलेगा तब उन लोगों को तुम लोग क्या हाईलाइट करोगे एक्स्ट्रा से? तुम लोग तो बिलीव करते हो ना रिप्रेजेंटेशन में, तो करो. मैं तो अपर कास्ट नहीं हूँ, मैं तो मिडिल कास्ट में हूँ. तो देखते हैं मेरा चैनल तुम कितना कहाँ तुम वायरल करते हो और शेयर करते फिरते हो. देखो कि ये मिडिल कास्ट होके क्या क्या बोल रहा है, और मिडिल कास्ट है, ठीक है, जो भी हमारा अग्रीमेंट डिसएग्रीमेंट हो, we can agree to disagree, but at least he's a middle class guy, and therefore let's break the hegemony of Brahmins and let's only promote College Street Kolkata. In the same way that people who complain about me listening to commie musicians, promote the fuck out of my channel then. Let's see. तो जब कोई हिंदुत्ववादी म्यूजिशियन है तो देखते हैं कौन क्या क्या मुझको कहाँ मिलियन सब्सक्राइबर तक ले जाता है मेरी म्यूजिक चैनल को.
Possibility of parts of India exercising their right to, in a way, express their freedom from Delhi. That we will have to now understand that we are different Indias moving in different directions.
Look, we're all committed to the unity of India, but I think it requires statesmanship in Delhi as well. You don't have to wait till 2047. In 2026, the 84th Amendment expires, and thereafter the government is free to redraw the Lok Sabha constituencies. Now, they can either do it in a way that they can say strictly respects the increased population in the Hindi belt and give themselves, because they're all very strong in the Hindi belt, the ruling party, give themselves a 2/3 majority in the Lok Sabha. Or they can say we've got to find arrangements that take the rest of the country along. Because if they do give themselves that 2/3 majority, and the first opportunity declare Hindi to be the national language, thereby disempowering the non-Hindi speakers, thereby declare a Hindu Rashtra, thereby disempowering the non-Hindu believers, and so on. If they do all of that, you will have a serious crisis of allegiance, because there will be people in the South saying, why do we want to be part of this experiment? Frankly, these are issues that people in the North have to be much more sensitive to. But if they have the wisdom and the statesmanship to say, we can make adjustments, but we don't have to put ourselves in a position where people will need to fear that, Aryavrat has been recreated in the North and everybody else is a supplicant, subjugated kingdom, as in the bad old days. If they don't do that, they show statesmanship, there's no reason why we shouldn't be a triumphant, unified, and successful country.
Harsh, do you agree with that?
What does this point mean? But Rishikesh, अरे तुमने ये क्या प्रश्न पूछ लिया मुझे. आज ही मेरा जो पिछला लाइव स्ट्रीम था डिस्कसिंग जापानीज कास्ट सिस्टम एंड हाउ इट गॉट फक्ड बिकॉज ऑफ कैपिटलिज्म, उसमें जो मैंने सॉन्ग डाला है बिकॉज इट वाज जापान रिलेटेड, मतलब इंस्टाग्राम स्टोरी में और इंस्टाग्राम पोस्ट में वही सॉन्ग है, बेखौफ, और बेबी मेटल को हिंदी गाना गवा दिया ब्लडीवुड ने. दिस इज व्हाट आई वाज सेइंग, दैट ब्लडीवुड मेक्स इंडिया प्राउड ऑन द इंटरनेशनल स्टेज इन फ्रंट ऑफ मेटल हेड्स ऑफ ऑल कलर्स एंड नेशनलिटीज. ब्लडीवुड डजंट प्ले इन NRI मैरिज गिग्स.
That, or do you think that there are real cleavages that are emerging in India between states that, for example, are rapidly pushing towards possible double-digit growth versus states which are struggling with population, with resources, with industrialization? So you've got two Indias or multiple Indias. You perhaps always have had them, but the inequalities, if anything, are only growing between North and South in particular.
I think there are multiple aspects there. We are seeing early signs of economic convergence between the states, coastal, broadly South and West, and the interior North and East. We are seeing early signs of convergence, Uttar Pradesh most prominently. But to answer it broadly, I think the fault lines are actually healing gradually instead of becoming worse. For example, look at Southern movies doing so well all over the country. Look at the fact that it's so easy for somebody to plug and play, relocate from Kolkata to Bangalore to Mumbai to Delhi and vice versa. That kind of broad basing of the middle class kind of fungibility was not there earlier. Earlier it was the ICS and the IAS, which actually, and before that, you could argue the Brahmins of the country, the sacred geography. Somebody would go and be a Pandit in Uttar Kashi from the south or vice versa. Diana Ek wrote the sacred geography of India, and many Indian authors wrote as well. So I don't agree with the notion.
Yeah, Radha Kumud Mukherjee, Jadunath Sarkar, R.C. Majumdar, all of them, all those Bengali historians. And the other point I want to mention is that wait, 2-3 point एक साथ दिमाग में आ गया, ठीक है, बाद में बोलूंगा.
Notion that we are falling apart precisely because the notion of civilizational awareness of what keeps us united is very much there and actually becoming stronger as the fault lines of caste and language actually go less and less. There is a lot of politics on language, I will grant you that. I don't think anybody will ever declare Hindi as a language.
Yeah, in terms of Brahmins going all around the country to go about their profession, etc. But that happened to such an extent that I forget his name, but the descendant of Chhatrapati Shivaji, much after Chhatrapati Shivaji's time, all of a sudden Brahmins of Maharashtra started saying that this guy is not a true Kshatriya, he doesn't deserve to be a king, because Chhatrapati Shivaji allegedly was not a Kshatriya. So that king hires Brahmins from Ujjain or UP and says that, okay, मुझे तो Brahmins चाहिए to declare me something, right? Attestation ही करना है. तो महाराष्ट्र के Brahmins नहीं करेंगे. I don't give a fuck. मैं बाहर से ब्राह्मण ला दूंगा. वो लोग आते हैं, उसको क्षत्रिय डिक्लेयर करते हैं और काम खत्म, no problem. Avinav is saying Bloodywood is fire. Incidentally, they have a huge fan base in the USA and Japan, and they don't care about Bloodywood because Bloodywood is a leftist band. That's not how it operates in the metal world. Okay, they hardly ever research politics in general, or they hardly ever research the internal politics of India to know that Bloodywood is a leftist band and therefore let's promote this band. ऐसे नहीं होता है भाई. Bloodywood का जो popularity है, that's 101% on just merit because of how awesome they are. And metal requires extra practice, riyaz, etc. So therefore metal musicians like see all genres don't require equal amounts of practice. Okay, so if you play some advanced forms of jazz, Indian classical, Western classical and metal, इन सब जॉनर्स में इतना प्रैक्टिस लगता है कि ऐसा पॉसिबल ही नहीं है कि दुनिया भर के मेटल म्यूजिशियंस या फिर मेटल फैंस, जो कि मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर म्यूजिशियंस themselves, which is why they like a non-mainstream band like Bloodywood, they will do practice all day, listen to music, work out, go about their lives, and then research on Indian fucking internal politics and realize that Bloodywood is a leftist band. ऐसा पॉसिबल ही नहीं है. और मेटल का प्रैक्टिस तो इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स है कि you will notice that a lot of guitarists who are very, very versatile can play almost all genres, absolutely suck when it comes to just metal. Guthrie Govan plays all genres beautifully, can't play metal. Rhythm Shaw, probably the best guitarist in India today, or at least if not one of the top 5 guitarists. Rhythm Shaw can play every genre, can't play metal. मेटल के लिए डिस्टिंक्ट अलग तरह का प्रैक्टिस लगता है, अलग टेक्निक्स है मेटल का. उसके बाद कोई इंटरनल इंडिया का पॉलिटिक्स फॉलो कर ही नहीं सकता है.
National language. If at all, Sanskrit at some point could become a link language. But it is important to understand that it is Hindi plus English, some kind of Creole there has become the de facto language of the street in most Indian cities. That is an organic process. It has not been enforced by anybody, and that is how it should be. But I do not support having one language for the entire country, and I don't think anybody sensible in the BJP does so.
So but every session of parliament, some BJP MP stands up and says,
there are so many MPs. If you had so many MPs, you'd also have some people saying silly things.
So let's be clear. Do you think the Indian state in a sense is behind civil society? Civil society in its own way is organically integrating, North and South are integrating. It's the Indian state which perhaps is a step behind. Do you believe that the Indian state needs to recognize in a way that perhaps the gap between Delhi and South India, or Thiruvananthapuram, needs to be bridged?
Look, Bollywood is actually doing a better job in promoting Hindi than the Hindi Prachar Sabha. I mean, the fact...
No, they are not doing. They have always done that, but on the nudge and push given by Congress in the early days of independence.
Is that you can have all these committees to promote Hindi coming out of Delhi. But if people need to understand some Hindi to follow their favorite films, that'll be enough for them to have an incentive to acquire it. I mean, why do people learn languages? Because it's useful for them in some way. If you make it obligatory that you can't deal with the government without knowing Hindi, or you can't deal with officialdom, you can't deal with the courts, then you...
See, I just lost about 15 viewers combined from Twitter and video just because I said good things about Bloodywood. What the fuck? So, this point is so important, that why do people learn languages? Why are people trying to learn Chinese these days, Russian these days, or why have we learned English in the first place? Why has learning English benefited us in ways that it hasn't benefited people who didn't know English? Why did CPIM banning English education in 1982 fuck the poor masses completely? Or why did Raja Ram Mohan Roy learn Farsi, Arabic, Urdu, Hindi, all the 50 languages that he knew? Why? For jobs, not for the love of languages. And this is the forever counter to Rantak Pakko, who doesn't get this, that you need to save Bengali language, save Bengali language. You can never save Bengali language if learning Bengali is absolutely worthless to your life. How do languages evolve, bro? How do languages evolve? How do languages get mixed up with other languages? Because someone says it in a wrong way. Wrong way of speaking a language gives birth to new languages. तो ये जो Bengali is a result of some Prakrit words and a bunch of Sanskrit words, ये कंप्लीट प्राकृत स्पीकर्स एंड कंप्लीट संस्कृत स्पीकर्स एक साथ रहने लगे, उसके वजह से कुछ लोग दोनों साइड से गलत प्राकृत एंड गलत संस्कृत बोलने लगे, वो मिक्सचर होके 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 बंगाली बना. तो अब बंगाली के साथ भी वही होगा अगर थोड़ा बहुत भी रहता है. तो प्योर फॉर्म में अगर बंगाली अभी भी जो ठीक ठाक का बंगाली है, जो कि ऑलरेडी बोंकिम का बंगाली नहीं है. आई हैड वन Bonkim poem in my class 6 Bengali syllabus and I almost quit education system altogether. Holy shit. So if you want to save that today's Bengali language, you have to make today learning Bengali an important thing. You have to incentivize learning Bengali, and that can't happen with West Bengal's fucking idiotic economy. It can't happen. Like, I'll give that example again because I just know this 1400-year-old 1500-year-old Bengali poem, so I'll just show off. Okay, the Buddhist scholar Bhushuku Shantideva was a researcher in Nalanda University, marries a Bengali girl, writes a quote-unquote Bengali poem which doesn't sound like Bengali at all, sounds a bit like Bihari and sounds a bit like Bengali. Okay, Bhushuku bajna padi paua khale niyo ghori ni chandali leli Bhushuku tu aaj Bengali bhaili. This is how distortions take place based on who wants to speak a language to converse to some degree with the guy I want to do business with, or I want to go live in a place where there is good education and stuff. So I'll have to learn the language somewhat, and then I'll speak it in a wrong way, obviously, because I was not a native speaker of that tongue. And then the society will go on evolving, and a new language will come about.
You have people's backs coming up. Whereas, yes, English isn't anybody's first language in the South or the North, but at least everyone's at an equal advantage or disadvantage. Everyone has to make the same effort to learn it. Therefore, it becomes a useful link language. That's the concept.
So basically, 2047, you see a more unified, harmonious India.
I'm saying it can be possible provided those who are ruling India show the wisdom and statesmanship required to recognize it.
Basically,
Avinav, this was completely a geopolitical thing. They were giving geopolitical signals and trying to maintain the friendship because we were essentially a Soviet colony up until 1991. तो it was for that reason कि देखो हमारा ये जो क्यूट बच्चा है कॉलोनी में कितना अच्छा गाना बजाना करता है. वो infantilization के तौर पे appreciation था.
you're asking the public.
Don't pander to the worst elements within your ruling party movement.
Basically, you're asking, make us the.
That's what Congress does. Like every time I listen to Tehseen Poonawala, I think, wow, such a nice guy. The party must be nice. And then I remember he's an absolute nobody probably in the party. No one in the party talks like him. Congress advocates for no policies that he advocates for. He's just a random Congressy in name only.
The ruling party once again.
Oh, that would be very welcome. Absolutely.
I don't know whether that will happen by 2047, but you know what?
You. I won't be around to find out, but thank you very much.
Neither will the Congress.
You know, but the fact is, equality is the other notion which was part of the very basis of the first Indian Republic was that equality of citizenship. But if you look at income inequalities, for example, and that is the big challenge, 10% of our population accounts for 58% of this country's national income. And the income inequalities have only seem to be widening at one level.
अभी तो शुरू है. Jealousy और ईर्ष्या and messiah complex के लिए कोई जगह नहीं रहना चाहिए हमारे society में anymore. We can't afford that anymore. We are done with that.
Got this great Indian middle class that has emerged. You've got millions of people who've been lifted out of poverty, but you still have sharp income inequalities. Do you see that as one of the fractures that could widen in the next 25 years? Or do you believe that as the economy grows, the fact is we will have those inequalities also lessening?
So I think there are a couple of aspects there. Inequality per se, and then opportunity/mobility. I think inequality, if you take a longer lens, Mughal period, British period, the Nehruvian socialist period, where of course a lot of the wealth at the top was not reported, by the way, because you had 97% taxes. I don't think inequality in that sense is increasing. In the last 20, 30 years, perhaps yes. Remember, the top Indian talent pool is globally mobile. They can work in Bangalore and show up, inequality numbers, or they can go to San Francisco, in which case you lose the taxes, but the inequality number goes down. What would you rather have? That's one. Secondly, it's more important to have broad-based opportunity and socioeconomic mobility. Now, on that case, for example, the fact that we are finally focusing on toilets, we're finally focusing on roads, we're finally focusing on electricity at the last level, drinking water at the last level. That is actually a real investment in human capital. I mean, I say that some of the most obvious Amartya Sen ideas have actually been implemented by the Narendra Modi government. And I think one of the reasons
That shows you where BJP is economically. It's a developmental economist party.
has happened is, let us be honest, he actually comes from the socio-economic background. It was perhaps not obvious to the earlier government that this should be done. And when it was being done, it was done in a very kind of noblesse oblige manner, kind of very condescending top-down manner. So it is very important to understand why
but with due regard, Harsh, let's be honest, road infrastructure didn't start in 2014.
No, I'm not saying
it's almost
accelerated.
I mean, it almost at times seems, even sometimes when I read your book, it almost as if India is, the Indian Republic has got independence after 2014, which it hasn't. Many of these ideas were before.
India also did not start in 1947, which is what it seems like when you listen to Nehruians. But let me just simply say that, of course, a lot of work happened earlier. But the fact that this final human capability has been bank accounts, especially women getting it, why was this not done earlier? Why was drinking water not a focus earlier?
The bank accounts were done earlier, but I'm actually not going to argue on one important point. I think that if you look at the hardware of development...
Yeah, this debate is brilliant because of another reason, because Shashi Tharoor does concede on one point that yes, BJP has done a good job. And Harsh Madhusudan also concedes one point that yes, BJP has screwed up on something and we need to do better. This is what true conversations should be always.
Development, the ports, the roads, the infrastructure, the railways, all of these things, this government is paying attention. And I will not criticize them. They've been giving it priority. But when it comes to the software of development, the fact that you still haven't seen an improvement in at least 250 million of our people do not have a primary healthcare center within 5 kilometers walk of their places of residence, a place where they can actually get a nurse or a doctor and medicines. So that's going to be an injustice that needs to be addressed. You need decent schools for our people. Our government schools are not decent, massive teacher absenteeism, lots of problems. So the ordinary person in India is not getting the education that will enable them to take advantage of the opportunities that the world offers them. So education and healthcare both need serious attention. Skill development for those who can't hack a conventional education. Why haven't we engaged the private sector much more? Getting companies of a certain size to compulsorily offer vocational training if necessary, with certificates attached, so people can then have the capacity.
Yeah. Why isn't government adopting children, basically? Suman Awasthi, his point is interesting, that Shashi Tharoor's argument has been that English is equally difficult for everyone, so let's make English the official national language and stuff. And so conversely, Suman is saying that then why not Sanskrit? The problem is that actually both are not equally tough for the entire country. English is always going to be easier to learn for people in urban areas, people who are in circles who watch English movies and consume English stuff. It cannot be equally tough for every Indian to learn English. We are way past that. मतलब 1780s में शायद ऐसा situation था कि it was equally tough for everyone. It has not been in such a situation for a long time. And Sanskrit में भी वही होगा कि a Bengali will pick up Sanskrit much more easily than a Tamil guy.
Move and get jobs done.
So why not then just listen to the market? The language that anyway people are learning, the language that people are ending up learning, वो हम bypass करके एक और language थोपेंगे by spending public taxes. What the fuck? Why?
These are the things that I would truly call human capital, and I think that's what Amartya Sen meant as well, is talking about the things that improve the quality of life of human beings. I want every Indian to be able by 2047 to take 3 meals a day for granted, to be guaranteed that there'll be a roof over their heads against the rain or the sun, and at the same time to be able to educate their kids, be taken care of without going bankrupt when they're sick, and have the capacity to dream of a better life for themselves and their children. That's what we need to achieve. That's true development. The roads and highways and bridges are great, they're important, but they can only work as a means to this larger end.
indirectly, socialist को अब कौन याद दिलाएगा? Indirectly, everything ends up contributing to human capital. The roads that Narendra Modi is building, all which I would agree, say as a libertarian that it could have been left to the market and all, but maybe not all roads and all. But everything that Narendra Modi is building, whether the nice infra, etc., all that also contributes to human capital, because that human can get to his job more quickly. He can do more stuff. He can be more comfortable. He can sleep better at night. He can be more productive in the society. Like I first thought of this point when Sanjeev Sanyal said this, of course, but parallelly or some a little before that or a little earlier, a little before I heard Sanjeev Sanyal say this point, it came to my mind. I was trying to hang out with a friend, and every day she was saying that, yeah, I want to come today, but see, at this point I have office and it takes 2.5 hours to go to office, 2.5 hours to return from office. Okay, Salt Lake Sector 5. So we had to meet up only on weekends. So anyone who lives in Kolkata knows the insanity of the traffic jam around Salt Lake Sector 5. It's of course improving now because of the metro and stuff. But imagine if the roads were better and broader. She could have done another extra job. She could have been more healthy. She could have done so many other things in those 5 hours that she spends every day in her journey. It was a fun thing I realized one day when while returning from Puri on my motorcycle. It took me 8.5 hours, and from Salt Lake Sector 5 to my home, it would always take 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
The larger end is a better life for ordinary Indians. Let these people have a decent job, the prospect of a better one, the ability to dream and think of a better future. That, if you like, is the essential Nehruvian vision. Is
BV, how much is Sanskrit there in Tamil?
standing for a better future for every Indian. That's what I believe in.
Good, you're still a Nehruvian. You're the last Nehruvian. But in a way, but Harsh, there is much in what Shashi Tharoor says, that while we are focusing on the hardware of development in the last 8 years, the software at times has been lost out. Education, key factor. You know, access to internet in schools is still 19% all over India. Only 14% in rural compared to 42% in urban areas. Now, I know that the task is gargantuan, but there's a sense that we still haven't paid enough attention to education and healthcare, and we were exposed rudely in this very city during the second wave of COVID, for example. The sense is that these are still critical. Do you believe that there will be a marked shift in the next 25 years towards the software that we need?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do you really see that happening?
Absolutely, and I think it has to happen. I would say it's already happening. For example, deworming, because I worked for MIT Poverty Action Lab long way back, was a massive success in India, completely underreported, which has massively increased student productivity at schools. Deworming was done at a nation level by the Modi government. Now, on education, I agree that it has been one of the less prioritized ministries. Just like Shashi conceded physical infrastructure was a good job, I would also concede that the soft part was not done very well. But, you know, they have more years, and it looks like they'll have more years in 2024 beginning as well. So we'll see where that goes.
We can help.
I must say one thing, that actually on the health side, the digital public goods, for example, the way this vaccination was done, for now 2 billion vaccines and counting. And it is a fact that my friends in the US, they never really had this kind of ease for their verification of vaccination, to go and show into the airport, etc.
Yeah.
On the internet part, I agree, much more needs to be done. But remember, the national telecom policy of Vajpayee government is what actually led to the massive rise in internet connectivity. And right now, after Geos, it's not just the government, it's the private sector as well. We have the world's cheapest internet and the most downloaded gigabytes per person in the world. Now, how much of that is salubrious or not, I don't know. But a lot of good stuff is happening.
Speed is
beyond out.
No, almost 40% of digital payments are coming out of India, which is quite remarkable.
India has leapfrogged even China on that. So this is not happened without technocrats at the government, including, by the way, people like Nandan Nilekani, who are not part of the BJP, who had earlier fought a ticket on the Congress. So it's a bipartisan effort in that sense, but promoted primarily by the Modi government.
So are you saying the idea of India in 2047 would be of a fully developed country? The Prime Minister in his Independence Day address said that. Like, you know, this is not about India becoming a developing country, but a developed country. But when I look at the numbers, we're way below. You know, look at per capita income of India, $2,000 odd dollars versus 12,000, which is the global average. So we are way below, and it takes about a decade to double. So we are not going to get anywhere close to what the Prime Minister's definition of a developed country by 2047 would be. My point is,
And I disagree on that.
Where do you see us, for example, in 2047?
Per capita income dollar terms actually depends a lot on the currency exchange, which is cyclical. So let's not go into that. But primarily, you have to look at Indian per capita incomes as a percentage of the global average. And we bottomed out, for example, compared to the US, at 1% in the 1990s. We're close to 3-4% right now. And it's very rapidly increasing. So it's like a classic exponential curve. It seems flat until it suddenly goes parabolic. So I would be patient on that. We are consistently having good per capita growth.
But that sudden gigantic growth is not going to happen with Amartya Sen policies.
Rate. Unlike UPA 1 and UPA 2, there have been a lot of structural reforms done. The GST could not be passed by the UPA government. It was passed by the BJP government for all its warts and all. Similarly,
because of the resistance of the Chief Minister of Gujarat. That's why it wasn't passed by the UPA government.
Well, you were not able to convince him, but he was able to convince your Chief Ministers. Why was that? Because he used the Finance
where
Commission
you stand on these matters depends on where you sit.
And how you prioritize it.
When he sat in Racecourse Road, his position
No,
changed.
the reason is because he guaranteed 5 years of GST payment to the states, and that's a decision the Congress government refused to take. On GST, on IBC is a massive reform which has totally unblocked our banking system. So these are big structural reforms, slow moving. They go through our jurisprudence, they set precedent and case. It takes a long time, but it has all happened. And there is a lot of tailwinds. I always say right now, the India story as an investor, speaking as an investor right now, it's like a spring that's about to be unleashed. And there's a lot of short-term pain, a lot of long-term gain. And in this case, I'm going to eat my cooking. So, you know, I have massive skin in the game. So we'll find out. My third book is called Long India, and that's what I'm writing about.
It's not coming out because maybe he's run out of good things to say about the way the economy is being run. And Shatrapavan was saying that Bengalis have bad Sanskrit pronunciations. Yes, the way Bengali people who do know Sanskrit pronounce Sanskrit, it's almost sounds like Bengali. They have completely Bengalijized Sanskrit itself. That doesn't sound remotely Sanskrit.
You know, Shashi Tharoor, in that sense, and as we sort of wind down, do you believe India will be a better place to live in 2047 than it is today in 2022? I mean, if we ask this question possibly at the dawn of independence in 1947, and you look 75 years later, you'd probably think the glass is half full and not just half empty. Your sense, do you believe India will be a better place to live in? There are serious challenges on the environmental front. I mentioned income inequalities, which are stark. There are possible north versus south challenges between states.
Hey, income inequality, where was it in 1991? What was the income inequality like in 1960, 70, 40, 50? Were we better off? Or were we, was our income inequality lower back then? And conversely, was the country better off?
That are moving much faster than the rest. Do you believe we will be a better place to live in? And therefore the new idea of India, as you see it, in 2047 will make India a better place to live in?
It could be, but it'll also depend on whether we can preserve social harmony and social peace. In other words, I think on the economic...
Peace is maintained with the threat of violence, unfortunately, always. You can't have peace without the threat of violence, unless it's a completely homogeneous high trust society. India is not a homogeneous high trust society. It's not high trust and it's not homogeneous, maybe because of the other. So their peace can be maintained only with the threat of violence, and people refuse to do threat of violence.
Front we've grown in every respect, every yardstick. I mean, Britain left us as a country with 16% literacy, 8% for women, 90% of people below the poverty line, and a life expectancy of 27. We've already come a long way from there. Okay, so your literacy rate is 82%, your life expectancy is 70, your maternal and child health and mortality figures are down. Everything is by and large in a transformative position. Of course, you still have people below the poverty line who, frankly, have done badly in the last few years, especially since demonetization and the COVID lockdown. But hopefully we can redress those and pull themselves up again. But the bigger question, it seems to me, is we don't want to be a country where you ask the question, are you better off? And the answer comes, well, it depends on you if you're a Muslim or not. I mean, the truth is, we should be a country where everyone is better off. We can be, but you've got to preserve social peace and harmony and get beyond this majoritarian communal bigotry that is poisoning
So you see
the
that
atmosphere.
you see that as the biggest challenge over the next 25 years, preserving India's unique social harmony and diversity.
I see it right now, Rajiv. He talked about us betraying the liberal Muslims. I have liberal Muslim friends. I have a Muslim friend who's married to a Hindu who came to me and said, my son was told by his classmates, I can't play with you because your family is Muslim. And she was in a state of shock when she told me this, and she was not the only case. This kind
Was she in a shock when the stuff with Nupur Sharma happened? And if she had been louder against radical Muslims, there would not come a time when the father of the friend of her child would come down to saying these things.
of toxicity that has gone into our society. This has to be pulled out. Otherwise, we're going to poison ourselves. And then, indeed, there will be a question of whether we are better off, we're leading a better life in the future or not.
Let me just juxtapose take forward what Shashi said in a way, because sometimes it appears our governance priorities are horribly misplaced. I drove from Bengaluru to Mysuru the other day. The road was terribly potholes everywhere. And what is happening with the ruling party in Karnataka? They're taking out a Savarkar Yatra. I wonder where the Savarkar Yatra fits in with basic governance. Where you've got contractors accusing the government of being a 40% commission government. Now, every Indian city you go to.
No, see, just because they did one Savarkar Yatra doesn't mean their funds for filling potholes was spent on the Savarkar Yatra. ऐसा चुतिया आर्ग्यूमेंट तो नहीं है ऐसा चुतिया आर्ग्यूमेंट मतलब तो फैक्ट तो नहीं है. और सावरकर यात्रा का बेनिफिट ये है कि पीपल विल थिंक ट्वाइस कि हाँ हुआ सावरकर, व्हाई इज दिस यात्रा गोइंग ऑन, एंड then maybe Google Savarkar, and Savarkar will become relevant in their phone algorithms if the thing is going around in their neighborhood. The values of Savarkar, which are secular as hell, that will get promoted. Secularism, where secularism will be truly maintained from the state. Merit hoga charor, and there will be the set of balance in maintaining peace both internally and externally. So it's good.
Potholes is a major problem from Mumbai to Bengaluru. This is not just about Karnataka. And then you hear of...
Yeah, West Bengal doesn't have potholes. So we saved up the money from Savarkar Yatra and filled all our potholes in West Bengal. Do you know that?
Savarkar Yatra is taking place. You hear of religious processions. You hear of Muslim traders not being allowed at religious festivals in Karnataka. So, Harsh, you're pointing out to our civilizational greatness. But on the ground, look at the reality. We seem to be forgetting. The average person not interested in what happened 1,000 years ago. He is living with the here and now. And we seem to have completely misplaced
we are actually issuing threats to each other about people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. So what you're saying is not factually correct. We're issuing threats to each other based on disrespect, apparent disrespect, to people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. So history is very much relevant.
देखो हर्ष Madhusudan का counters. Shatra Pavan is saying no roads, no potholes problem. So let me tell you a story. It's actually true. This is how some governments and local governance does look at a problem this way often. There's a certain flyover in West Bengal which is famous for accidents. Okay, so when it's the quality of the pitch on the flyover got fucked, they didn't mend it for about 2-3 years at one point because they thought, चलो एक्सीडेंट्स तो कम हो गया. इतना खराब रास्ता है कि कोई बाइकर जाके वहां पे कॉर्नर वर्नर नहीं ले पा रहा है, नी डाउन नहीं होगा, एक्सीडेंट भी नहीं होगा, तो घटिया रास्ता रहने दो.
Whether Naipaul was absolutely correct on that. In terms of roads,
well, I'm saying governance versus overt religiosity.
I think it's a false binary. If you like good expressways, Yogi Adityanath is going to be your favorite chief minister. Uttar Pradesh by far has the largest network of expressways in India, and it's only growing by leaps and bounds. So there is no versus Savarkar.
Yogi Adityanath se yaad aaya. I have to tell this story. I've been meaning to tell this, and just today I got the confirmation. So I have two two close female friends, one of whom is married to a very, very close male friend of mine who's almost in my like top 2 3 friend circle. And one was my childhood friend from school. And now we all our friend circle got introduced to her husband when she started dating him. So now there's a difference between these two people. The fun part is that the friend who's actually closer to me, the childhood friend who got married to a person we didn't know, now we are great friends with that man as well. She had a baby within like just within the first year of her marriage. And since my circle is mainly commie, leftist, liberal, they all of them started saying that, oh my god, it's such a brave decision, but yeah, you could do it only because of your privilege, and or you screwed up your life, your freedom is fucked, etc. And the the day she first came to my house after recovering from her delivery, from that day onwards I started saying that, when's the next one coming? When's the next one coming? You need to have at least 4 or 5 kids. You have such great genes, you are so healthy. She used to be an athlete. Her husband is so fit and healthy. See, Bengalis are so weak these days. You need to repopulate the fit Hindu Bengali class. She's not a right winger, but I guess she thought about it somewhat. And today she said that they are planning for the next one, and she's going to take fitness tips from me and going to be fit as fuck, and they're going to conceive once again by next year. So I was very happy with that, and I'm going to convince her to not stop at the second one. Now the fun part is that the amount of support she got for having a kid, and the attention and the adulation, adoration, respect from all our friends in the circle, that my other female friend, who is woke as fuck, okay, her husband is not woke at all, okay. I don't know how their marriage works. It's been on the verge of a divorce many times, but about 2 years back I had a pretty ugly debate with her in front of that other friend, by the way, who already had a child by then, about having kids. She said that there's no fucking way I'll ever have a kid. I have one dog and I'll have another dog when I'm more financially stable, and that's going to be it. And I said, what about a human kid? She said that no, not happening. I'm not going to make my body go through it. And I said, what about my male friend's consent, the guy who's your husband? She said that it's not a matter that he needs to comment on. It's my body, my choice, etc. So that debate turned ugly, and I was very sleep deprived that day. After coming home and thinking about it, I apologized to her for being rude. Now, few weeks back, out of the blue, she and her husband informed all of us that she's also pregnant and is looking forward to it. I think my hunch is because she saw, and both of them are Hindu, so because she saw the way we treat that other friend who already has a child. So you see, there are many ways to increase the TFR.
There.
So many of those started under Akhilesh Yadav also.
Again, he'll get more 5 years so that we can discuss more expressways going forward. But let me answer, and more seriously, let me answer this question. I think it is the unique contribution of Dharma to focus on fraternity. Like, the problem with Western political philosophy is we're so focused on liberty versus equality, right? Like John Rawls to now the woke politics we are seeing.
Yeah, it's related to Yogi because that friend who's planning her second kid just informed me today that they are going to go to Banaras for a family trip. And I said, are you going to Mahakumbh then? She said that, yeah, we intend to. We are not sure if we'll get the time and stuff. We do plan to go to Mahakumbh. I said that, okay, do go to Kashi Vishwanath temple and Assi Ghat. That's where Netaji was cremated. And absolutely Mahakumbh. You will not get accommodation there, obviously, but go there. And she said that, yeah, I do want to go, but I don't trust that everyone's going there with the correct mindset and all. There are so many people just going there to get stoned and stuff. I said, bro, see, there are 40-45 crore people there. all of them are not going there just to get high, right? She said, yeah, yeah. Then I said that, the conversation started with security arrangements. She said that we'll go with our daughter. What if she gets lost? Kumbh ke beech, mele mein bichre hue. We see so many movies and stuff. I said that no, it's not going to happen. The security arrangements are absolutely awesome in UP right now. She said that, yeah, these things do have good security arrangements. I've been to the Bengal version of Kumbh, Ganga Sagar Mela, etc. I said, "Arey, don't compare Mamata Banerjee's security arrangements with Yogi Adityanath's security arrangements." So, वहाँ से conversation शुरू हुआ. Then she knows that I'm into Lord Bhairava. So she said that I'm definitely going to the Bhairav temple as well. So that's how that conversation took shape.
They forgot what keeps societies together. Hinduism is a very kind of problematic term in the sense we don't understand what you're talking about. Radhakrishnan used to call Hinduism a commonwealth of religions, not religion, a commonwealth of religions. It is the superstructure, the operating system that allows people to live with mutual respect. People who are threatening that operating system.
This point he mentioned, this is actually a very important point. I have something to add here.
Let me answer this question. I think it is the unique contribution of Dharma to focus on fraternity. Like, the problem with...
Yeah, what I wanted to point out was that I really like this about annihilation of caste. In I think the very first page that Ambedkar says is that why are we always going on blabbering about liberty, equality? Fraternity kahan pe hai? Unity kahan pe hai? एक मुसलमान के ऊपर हाथ उठाओ 10 मुसलमान खड़े हो जाते हैं, वैसा यूनिटी हमारे हिंदुओं में क्यों नहीं है? तो fraternity is important. That's what he was saying. I don't think fraternity can happen out of the blue in a diverse, non-homogeneous society. But yeah, it's at least we can start a discourse on fraternity.
With Western political philosophy is so...
Yeah, it's not like we are not having a discourse on fraternity. Hindutva is a discourse on fraternity only.
On liberty versus equality, right? Like John Rawls to now the woke politics we are seeing, they forgot what keeps societies together. Hinduism is a very kind of problematic term in the sense we don't understand what you're talking about. Radhakrishnan used to call Hinduism a commonwealth of religions, not religion, a commonwealth of religions. It is the superstructure, the operating system that allows people to live with mutual respect. People who are threatening that operating system will face resistance. And unfortunately, on the ground, it sometimes gets ugly.
No, but Radhakrishnan's Hinduism is very different, Harsh, from the Hindutva that is being practiced at... that is not...
Protecting Hinduism is Hindutva.
But you're not understanding the same people who voted for the Congress who are now voting for the BJP.
Forget voting preferences for a
Oh,
moment.
forget.
The Hindutva of the political style that we are seeing today versus the philosophical, spiritual Hinduism that Radhakrishnan spoke about cannot be compared. I'm just asking.
And I've written a couple of books about it.
No, as we look ahead to 2047, are we going to see the fault lines increasing based on historical battles that have to be fought over Tipu Sultan?
So, for example,
over Savarkar,
when
basic governance.
When Shashi writes against British colonialism, remember they were British Christian colonialists. Nobody in India thinks that we are speaking against Indian Christians. So if somebody speaks against primarily Turkic Muslims, but also Afghan, Arab, Iranian occasionally, why do we assume we are speaking against Indian Muslims? The problem is if somebody today defends Aurangzeb, when we can see what is the reality of Kashi in front of our eyes, we can see the direction in which Nandi is facing. The problem is not in the past. The past is not yet past. That is the issue. There is no closure there.
It's not past because you're not looking to put closure.
Indian Union Muslim League partner of the Congress in Kerala supported the decision to convert Hagia Sophia to a full mosque. Let us ask him, is he okay with Ayodhya, Kashi, Mathura being all mandirs? And if not, why not? Remember, Somnath was converted, brought back to its glory by the Congress party, by K.M. Munshi, by Mahatma Gandhi's permission. He only said, please do not use taxpayer rupees, and we did not use taxpayer rupees. It is the Congress party which has left India. India has not left the Congress party. And that's all I would like to tell Shashi. If he wants to bring back the opposition, and people like him want to bring back the opposition, stop calling people bigots. Please introspect what has gone wrong, and you will realize the fault is not in our stars, it is in ourselves.
Well, I'm glad that Harsh seems to have a fan club here, but the fact is that, almost every sentence he spoke deserves a challenge, particularly. I'm not a spokesman for the Muslim League, but they played an exemplary role when the Babri Masjid was knocked down in '92 in preserving communal peace in Kerala. Their spiritual and political leaders did an amazing job of ensuring no passions were allowed to spill over in the Muslim community. I think having a Muslim party that believes in the idea of India and that actually educates women, that supports integration is actually good for India. I don't think it's a negative
What about a
thing.
Hindu party that does that?
Yeah, and when a Hindu party does that, that's fine too. We have them
But
too.
then by numbers, they'll win the majority.
No, but it cannot be a Hindu
You have to
party.
have first principles.
Oh!
It cannot be a Hindu party that then decides that we will ban Muslim traders from coming to religious festivals
Exactly.
in Karnataka, which they have been doing for centuries.
And
It will
persecute
not be
girls wearing the
someone.
hijab
It will
will
not be someone who will target someone on the basis of the clothes you wear, who you
I
marry,
fully
what you
concede
eat.
communal.
You agree with that or not?
You're focusing on only one aspect of the ledger. You're not looking at the other side of the ledger. You're not looking at violence.
Look, Harsh,
when
you talked about
It's a counter. They are responses to something. You never talked about the something. You are only talking about the response. And Harsh Madhusudan just being respectful to Shashi.
Kashi Vishwanathan, we can talk about Gyan Bhapi as well, and so on. The historical facts are not in dispute. The question is, if something was done wrong,
Oh, हाँ, ये है बढ़िया कॉप आउट जो नया नया सीखा है लेफ्ट ने. Historical facts are not in dispute. Irfan Habib, Audrey Tashki, all of them are saying that yes, we know temples were destroyed. The question is whether we should rebuild them and reclaim them and stuff or not.
in 1700, should we use 2022 to settle it now?
what's the harm in
Who will get hurt
what's
today?
the harm in conceding it to the Hindus today?
Because the Muslims are worshipping at the spot
What's
today.
the harm? It was meant to humiliate the Hindu majority. Let us be very blunt about it.
How long are we going to be
Why are we
humiliated?
taking down
Why do we have this inferiority
Why are we
complex?
taking down Confederate statues in the
Inferiority complex नहीं है इसलिए तो वापस मांग रहा है. ये क्या अजीब argument है. Yeah, why are people taking down Confederate statues, which the left supports?
southern United States? That is also passed, is it not? Why are we saying that no more statues of Lee in the southern US?
We are therefore,
Why is the Pope going and apologizing?
the idea of India is meant to look ahead, not
That's
behind.
right, that's
हाँ, ahead सिर्फ हम देखेंगे by forgetting the past. बाकी सब अमेरिका वो जब पास्ट में देखेंगे तब बोलेंगे कि हाँ वो भी ahead ही है मगर for a better ahead.
I sometimes wonder whether the idea of India does not need to look at a rear view mirror. The idea of India needs to look ahead. That's what will build a really new idea of
I agree.
India. There you agree. Good, we've got agreement at least on that. That we don't need to look at Tipu possibly or Savarkar. We need to look.
We cannot be ignorant of the past. Otherwise, we'll
We
be
don't have
condemned
to
to
be
repeat it.
ignorant of the past. We don't need to settle past scores.
today.
You don't need to necessarily, because that can lead to friction.
टीपू और सावरकर पे बात तो भाई अभी शुरू हुआ है, वो भी ठीक से नहीं. अभी देखो कहाँ कितना तक जाता है. टीपू ठीक है, टीपू को तो एक 951 का पेज का बुक मिल गया, जो बुक अगर विक्रम संपत खुद से मार देता टीपू के मुंह पे वो वैसे भी मर जाता. बट सावरकर तो द गेम हैज ओनली बिगन.
That can be, and this is a unique country. It's perhaps the greatest country in the world because over the years it's accommodated all kinds of people, Jews, Parsis. People have come from across the world and embraced India.
One guy
That
clapped.
Makes this not a new idea of India, but the old idea of India that needs refreshment. And on that note, I want to ask both of you with just 30 seconds left each, what's the best thing about being Indian? Let's leave on a positive, unified note. What's the best thing, Harsh, you first, about being Indian?
I think the best thing is that we are the only democracy, as I said, from Israel to Kerala. We are the vanguard state of Dharma, if you will. We are the future. We will actually bring back the traditional religions, not just in India, but across the world, while being modernist. Because in Hindu Dharma, or Dharma more broadly, religion and science are not opposites. Modernity and tradition are not opposites. And it is this unique combination, this ability to look beyond binaries. That is the Indian gift. And if I may say so bluntly, that is the Hindu gift. That's what makes me proud.
Surely the Hindu gift is also not sort of judging people on the basis of the clothes they wear, what they eat, who they marry, crucially. So we need to recognize that is all. We have differing views possibly on what is Hindu Dharma, but we will debate that on another day. Shashi, Tharoor, what's the best thing? Not about being first of all, what's the best thing about being a congressman at the moment?
Now, let me answer your question, which was about what's
Because
the best
I was
of
going to
being
get a
Indian.
news point out of you because you were also part of the G23, but this would not be the right forum to do that.
That's right.
So we'll find
And
another
I
forum.
didn't come here to talk about that. You
So
said,
give me
what's the
what
best?
is the best thing about being Indian?
Democracy, diversity, acceptance of difference, inclusiveness, and a willingness to debate. I mean, we were the argumentative Indians of Amartya Sen's famous title.
Diversity is not inherently awesome. Diversity is awesome only when it leads to good benefits.
Because throughout our history, every point of view was acceptable. You just had to argue it out. Shastrarth was our tradition.
Ah.
So I'm glad we
So why did I not ever hear the word Shastrarth before 2020?
had a chance to argue things today.
Purva Paksha.
But ultimately, the fact that you do so with respect, that you don't illegitimize the other point of view, but you talk things through with a view to eventually going on and living together, that was the great strength of Indianness. I hope that will not be undermined.
No, we can do both. I can delegitimize a commie's argument, and I can live in the same country with them.
By those who have the good fortune to be in power today.
You know, actually, there's a lovely word in Varanasi that is used again and again. And since Varanasi is always top of the mind, it's samvad, which is dialogue. So if we can move from
अब सबको संस्कृतम words चाहिए, ढूंढ के निकालो अपना arguments justify करने के लिए.
samvad, if we can move from vivad to samvad by discussing these issues of our times, maybe we will once again.
ये word use करने के लिए 2022 तक wait करना पड़ा ना तुम लोग को. अच्छा, next debate we are going to check out is another one very close to my heart. For that reason, we are going to check it out. It's another debate where Shashi Tharoor lost brutally. Only, I think, second worst way after this, which is Shashi Tharoor versus Desai Deepak, which was also the very first thing I ever consumed by Desai Deepak. And it's going to be nostalgic because I haven't heard that debate in a long time. It's going to be fun. It was in a small room. Desai Deepak, Shashi. It was in a small setup, small audience. बहुत दिन हो गए ये देखे.
I think now the discussion begins. So
हाँ, fan van चल रहा है. अच्छा, before that, let me take a bit of a stretching break. I'll come back in 2-3 minutes. Bye. Coming after 3-4 minutes after a break, then we'll check out this awesome debate. Desai Deepak's probably one of his best performances. This actually put Desai Deepak on the map because of his defeating Shashi Tharoor.
শুনিয়ে
एक तो भाई अपने बाल क्यों काटे? Because of hair loss, I'm getting old. Thank you for the compliments, guys.
Sai, Deepak, what would you like to say and what would you like to ask Shashi?
Am I audible? Am I audible? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. You're holding it, I think.
And this was very awesome of Shashi Tharoor to invite Desai Deepak, I think, or the organizers maybe suggested it, because it was actually a promotion for Shashi Tharoor's book, जहाँ पे जैसा दीपक ने आके ऑथर को ही धो डाला और प्रमोशन होना था बुक का, शशि थरूर के बुक का. इट वाज अ वेरी वेरी वियर्ड ऑकवर्ड सिचुएशन.
Oh, okay. So, first of all, thank you, Dr. Krishna, for giving me an opportunity to share space with Dr. Tharoor, and congratulations on your book, sir. I've had the opportunity to go through it, at least the important portions of it. And as someone who typically doesn't use a pen to mark on a book, I was forced to do it this time because there were certain aspects that I came across. The one thing that I certainly agree with.
How did they exactly wear the same clothes? सिर्फ color difference है.
Dr. Krishna on is that for all practical purposes, my book is perhaps an inadvertent rebuttal of yours. And my book was released on August 13th.
And तब तो जैसा दीपक उतना famous नहीं था, तो the way Shashi Tharoor looks at him is like in the sense that, wow, अच्छा ऐसा है young man, okay, good job, well done young man. एक मिनट full screen करके देखो, हाँ ये देखो, look at his expressions.
Last week was actually the Chennai release, so to speak. And
जैसा दीपक आके खुद का बुक भी प्रमोट कर लिया, डिबेट में उड़ा भी दिया होस्ट बुक ऑथर को.
The good thing that I've done, and this is not an attempt at self-edification, is that I have steered clear of all the Hindutva ideologues, so to speak, in building my case, which is that there is no reference to Savarkar whatsoever. There is no reference whatsoever to even Tagore or Gandhi or anybody else for that matter. And let me start with perhaps a factual correction. Kindly indulge me. Hindutva was not coined by Savarkar. Hindutva was coined by Chandranath Boshu in 1892 in his essay on Hindutva.
And I was very impressed with Jayasai Deepak for saying Boshu, not Basu.
Hindutva specifically. Long before Savarkar actually wrote on the subject, someone had already thought of it and had actually fleshed out its embodiment, so to speak, and Chandranath Boshu. Yes. So Hindutva, unfortunately or fortunately, is attributed to the mind of Savarkar when in fact it's not. So that's the first factual correction. Second, I wouldn't dare use the word criticism because I would be stepping into too large shoes. I wouldn't do that. But my own impression of your book is that perhaps it takes a truncated view of what people crudely dub as Hindu nationalism. I have addressed certain parts of that actually as part of my book. The idea is to place the current movement and the awakening of this particular society within the larger canvas of what global scholarship refers to as decoloniality, which is to basically say that post-colonial societies are trying to shed the baggage of post-colonialism and wear the lens of decoloniality to be able to re-access their past and not recreate their past, but to reinscribe certain values of the past in the institutions of the present and hopefully chart a more indigenous future. But it's not possible to completely create an indigenous future simply because it happens to be an integrated world. And that's the reality that you have to deal with and actively engage with. So the idea is to create perhaps a hybrid future.
ये हाइब्रिड फ्यूचर तो किसी के कान में घुसा ही नहीं आज तक. सब लोग बोलते हैं हाँ, मतलब both sides are wrong in thinking that decoloniality means getting back to the exact way of life in 500 BC. People think that yes, decoloniality and Jayasai Deepak is awesome because he recommends a 500 BC lifestyle, and people who hate decoloniality also think the same way, that Jayasai Deepak and decoloniality sucks because he talks about going back to a 500 BC lifestyle. और Jayasai Deepak ये हाइब्रिड फ्यूचर बोल बोल के थक गया हर इंटरव्यू में, पॉडकास्ट में, जब इंडिया दैट इज भारत का प्रमोशन चल रहा था. And now he doesn't talk about decoloniality anyway too much. But I just wanted to tell you all the qualifications of that man, Chandranath Bosu. Okay, so check this out. Born in a zamindar family in Bengal Presidency, Chandranath Bosu received his MA in history in 1866 and a degree in law the next year. MA in history 1866 from Calcutta University, graduation from Presidency College. Okay. Then Deputy Magistrate of Dhaka. What are his other qualifications? Yeah. Chandranath permanently settled in Kolkata after being inducted as a librarian of the Bengal Library. In 1877, he was also appointed as the official translator to the Bengal government. Chandranath served in this capacity till his superannuation in 1904. He also served as that's when Arthashastra was rediscovered. He also served as the principal of Jaipur College of Education, Jaipur in Bengal, okay, and held a seat in the Vernacular Textbook Committee, responsible for selecting curricula up till secondary tier. Chandranath was also the temporary vice chairman of the Bongyo Sahitya Parishad for a few months. सिर्फ हिंदुत्व पे book लिख दिया, इसलिए Bengal society was made to never even hear of this man. ठीक है? Free speech सीखेंगे हम in mother चौदह से. Not Shashi Tharoor. He didn't even hear of. He was a victim of this kind of thinking. But चंद्रनाथ बोसु नाम का कोई आदमी एग्जिस्ट करता है, यही हमको पता नहीं चला. And graduation masters in history law, becoming a district magistrate in the late 1800s. ठीक है, उसके लिए जो क्वालिफिकेशन तब चाहिए था वो तो आज की तरह नहीं है. आज की तरह ग्रेजुएशन मास्टर्स का इन्फ्लेशन तो नहीं है तब. एवरीवन नोज दिस इन इंडिया, राइट? उस टाइम पे क्लास 10 पास आउट करना, 12 पास आउट करना ही बहुत बहुत बड़ा अचीवमेंट था, क्योंकि उतना भयानक टफ था. एंड इट वाज डन बाय सो लेस नंबर्स ऑफ पीपल. उस समय पे कोई हिस्ट्री में मास्टर्स कर रहा है तुम्हारे एजुकेशन सिस्टम में, कैलकाटा यूनिवर्सिटी में, प्रेसिडेंसी कॉलेज में, फिर लॉ पास आउट कर रहा है, डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट बन रहा है, उसको कुछ पता नहीं है. और हिंदुत्व पे बुक लिख दिया, मारो मारो लात.
Which has a greater quotient of indigeneity as opposed to coloniality. Let me say this with as much humility as I can marshal at this point, that perhaps your previous book on the British colonial period, as well as this book, completely missed the scholarship of decoloniality, because unfortunately, Bharat's experience with colonialism is being approached with a blinkered vision. And I'm making a reference to a general school of thought, and I'm not making this personal at all. Because the idea that Hindu nationalism is fundamentally exclusionist and comes to the detriment of and at the peril of religious minorities in this country is to impose the guilt as well as the framework of European nationalism on Bharatiya consciousness.
Oh.
And every mistake and every...
No, Jup. Losing a manuscript means exactly that. Everyone was hearing of Arthashastra, citations of Arthashastra elsewhere, but no one knew what exactly was Arthashastra and where is it and what's in the entirety of the text. It was lost until 1904 or 1901 or 2 something.
Folly and every massacre or every genocide which was perpetrated in the name of European nationalism is somehow consciously and unconsciously sought to be transposed onto Bharatiya reawakening. I do not wish to call it Hindutva. I do not wish to call it, let's say, any twa, so to speak. I will simply call it Bharatiya Dharmic Civilizational Reawakening, which is what it translates to.
And the way Shashi Tharoor is looking at him, you see, he's looking at him as a nice up and coming young Turk. Acha, ha, bacha badhiya kaam kar raha hai. In that sense only. Many other commies would have been fuming and coming out with insane, bad taste, bad intentioned arguments.
The problem is, unfortunately, whenever this discussion starts, we seem to be fixated with certain personalities, which is Savarkar, so on and so forth. I am happy to completely discard Savarkar, and I'm sure this is going to get me a lot of hate mail, completely discard Savarkar to build a case for Hindu civilizationalism or Dharmic civilizationalism, because it is possible to do so. And the concept of Dharmic...
And ये डिबेट के बाद से ही बहुत सारे लोगों का ट्विटर हैंडल, यूट्यूब चैनल में नाम सिविलाइजेशनिस्ट बन गया.
civilizationalism
जैसा दीपक का कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस मतलब हम सबको पता रहता है कि हाँ हाँ जैसा दीपक कोई बड़ी आदमी है, कुछ बढ़िया कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस किया है, मगर एग्जैक्टली क्या क्या कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस किया है ये कभी कभी हम भूल जाते हैं, स्पेशली बिकॉज जैसा दीपक इज नॉट दैट मच in the live talks and seminars space these days. He's very busy with writing the book and his personal work, but हमको भूलना नहीं चाहिए, especially people like us who have read his book and seen those debates of OG Desai Deepak. He contributed so many thought processes and frameworks in the Hindutva discourse.
is much larger than any single individual. And to box it and lay it at the doors entirely of one particular person simply because he comes from an inconvenient political camp, so to speak, or espouses a certain cause that may not be politically correct, would be to do grave injustice to the society using one particular individual as the strawman of the argument. So therefore, it is my position, and I say this with all humility, that with due respect to Sri Savarkar and his contributions, because I've seen the tone as well as the manner in which you refer to him, I'm absolutely sure that it's not possible for us to glorify all parts of any individual. You would agree with that. Be it Mahatma Gandhi, or at least I refer to him as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. I choose not to refer to him as Mahatma Gandhi. Pardon me for saying so. Or for the matter, Dr. Ambedkar. I don't think there is a single individual, if you choose to start scrutinizing them, that you would find yourself agreeing with all parts of everything that they say. Be that as it may, you try and make do with those parts which you believe, define them, characterize them. Therefore, for all his flaws and whatever...
Look at Shashi Tharoor. And you see so many such products, especially people like Desai Deepak, Sanjeev Sanyal, and Harsh Madhusudan. None of them are RSS products. तो narrative का काम RSS का था, सिर्फ ग्राउंड वर्क कर लिए, मगर ये सब पढ़ाई जैसा दीपक ने खुद से किया. जैसे दीपक से ही तो हमने शायद पहली बार सुना कि पाकिस्तान और पार्टीशन ऑफ इंडिया नाम का एक बुक है, वहां पे अंबेडकर ने ऐसी चीजें लिख दिया है, उसको साइटेशन से भरा दिया, वो बुक का सेक्शंस डाल डाल के इंडिया दैट इज भारत में. फिर लास्ट ईयर आई फाउंड आउट फ्रॉम अ पर्सन दैट पीपल इन बंगाल आरएसएस एंड स्टफ, बंगाल बीजेपी सर्कल्स, they even didn't know of this book called Pakistan or Partition of India up until like 7-8 years back. Can you believe this? अंबेडकर है गाली दो, नहीं नहीं उन्होंने गाली दिया है, मगर हाँ कास्टिज्म हुआ था, हाँ रिजर्वेशन भी ठीक है, मगर अंबेडकर को हम पढ़ेंगे भी नहीं, यूज भी नहीं करेंगे.
Whatever they may be, Savarkar was effectively putting forth a position which was already in public domain, and he was capturing a certain spirit. But be that as it may, I don't wish to be the mouthpiece of Savarkar here. The point is, it is possible, and it must be so, that you look at this particular concept of Dharmic civilizationalism independent of the lens of European nationalism. Unfortunately, the moment this discussion starts, I think people start cherry-picking certain facts, which is that the constitution is fundamentally antithetical to, or is it loggerheads with, the Hindutva vision of a Hindu rashtra, so to speak. So perhaps you may want to look at the draft constitution that was presented by the Hindu Mahasabha, which actually promised equal rights to religious minorities.
Yeah, and this was a very very significant argument for me, because ये डिबेट मैं जब देख रहा था तब तक I am a cautious Hindutvadi, cautiously approaching Hindutvadi. I've just become a nascent baby Hindutvadi at that point, only from reading Sanjeev Sanyal's Land of Seven Rivers. कि पता चला हाँ इंडिया बढ़िया चीजें करता था एंशिएंट पास्ट में भी, और फिर थोड़ा बहुत कुशल मेहरा देखा है मैंने. एंड देन आई हियर दीज आर्ग्यूमेंट्स कि मैं उस वक्त तब तक भी सोच रहा था कि हाँ ठीक है हिंदुत्ववादी yesteryears में भोसरी वाले हुए होंगे, आजकल के हिंदुत्ववादी लाइक कुशल मेहरा, संजीव सन्याल, आई थिंक दे आर रियली गुड पीपल एंड दे आर चार्टिंग अ बेटर पाथ फॉरवर्ड एंड मूविंग ऑन फ्रॉम द मिस्टेक्स और द इविल हिंदुत्वा फैशिस्ट मिस्टेक्स ऑफ एंशिएंट हिंदुत्ववादीज. तो देन आई हियर दैट ड्राफ्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के, हिंदू सभा के ड्राफ्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में सब राइट्स है. एंड देन मंथ्स लेटर माय चैनल स्टार्टेड. Then from this channel I discussed and basically read out and discussed the entire draft constitution. वो वीडियो है मेरे वीडियोस सेक्शन में. if you search will हिंदू सऊदी अरेबिया, ये है हिंदू पाकिस्तान क्वेश्चन मार्क कॉलेज स्ट्रीट कोलकाता, ऐसे सर्च करोगे तो मिलेगा. तो we go through the entire constitution. It's filled with nice awesome liberal things as well as self defense laws.
And the reason why this is important for us to point out is because assuming for a moment that we did not have the concept of contemporary constitutionalism emanating from Europe, even then, Bharat as a civilization has always welcomed those people who are willing to live with us. We did not have a constitution when persecuted Parsis.
Right. These are the arguments which I first heard in Land of Seven Rivers. कि अरे जूस है इंडिया में ये तब आए थे और हमने जगह दिया. Parsis, so I didn't even know who they were and what's their religion and stuff. I thought they are some Indian people only. Never thought of them as outsiders and who came to India and stuff. What is ACK Comics? Amar Chitra Katha, right? Yeah. My grandmother used to give me a lot of Amar Chitra Katha, but only for the some Ravidas या गुरुदास ऐसे किसी का और वो abridged Ramayana Mahabharata. Only those 2-3 I read.
Knocked at the doors of Bharat. We did not have a constitution when, let's say, the Jews from your state, so to speak, and even from the Northeast, knocked at the doors of Bharat. So to attribute certain large-heartedness entirely to the constitution, I would say, is to protect the constitution at the expense of the civilization, which I think is grave injustice. Grave injustice.
I've never done that.
I'll just finish my point.
When you finish.
So as far as I'm concerned, to assume that the constitution is somehow a civilizing tool which seeks to educate and civilize and, let's say, uplift a certain regressive society, which is at loggerheads with the value of constitutionalism, which doesn't know what is democracy, which doesn't know what it is to accommodate minorities. No. It is a product of the fundamental spirit of this particular land. And despite the horrors of partition, which we must never forget, despite the reality and tragedy of partition, which we must never forget, despite the reality of the two-nation theory, which was specifically foisted on us, which we must never forget, I think this country has done a vastly superior job of protecting its minorities than our former, let's say, estranged cousins, so to speak. And I think the proof of that lies in the fact.
Shashi Tharoor goes on smiling like, oh, young man, you are doing a good job. But how much am I supposed to care about the fact that Deepak might give you casteist vibes today? Ask him point blank. He might not reply to you. Maybe he will reply in some other places. Ashish Dhar के podcast में ऐसे points बोल दिए कि trads को गुस्सा आ जाएगा. But let's imagine, assume for a moment that yes, now he has become casteist. He wasn't at one point maybe. He has become now, or he was always casteist, and he hid it. But what am I supposed to do with these arguments, bro? ऐसे arguments जिसने दिया उसे मैं भूल जाऊं या फिर ये arguments को भूल जाऊं या इसे मतलब एक significant आदमी ना मानूं?
So it actually is very, very surprising when
because this line of argument was very different from what Kushal, Sandeep Sanyal, Anand Ranganathan, etc. have presented. Everyone has a different set of priorities in terms of how they want to further Hindu interests. This line of argument has been very, very important for us as well. And it's become mainstream these days, but I don't think the next generation of Hindutwadis and even the kids in their first year of college and stuff don't realize that the stuff you all are thinking to be mainstream these days are probably so obvious that everyone agrees upon them, but some of them specifically came from J.S. Deepak, like especially this line of argument. Okay, ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन भाई हमको सिविलाइज करने के लिए बनाया गया है. हम उसके पहले सिर्फ नंगे होके घूमते थे और सिर्फ मारदंगा करते थे. ऐसा है डेमोक्रेसी टॉलरेंस कुछ बहुत सी हमको पता नहीं था. ये सब J.S. Deepak से आया है. और इंडिया के पास्ट में क्या बढ़िया चीजें हुए हैं ये संदीप सन्याल से आया है.
Constantly told that this particular country, if it becomes a Hindu Rashtra or if it becomes a Dharmic civilizational state, so to speak, is bound to become what you refer to in your book as the Hindu Pakistan. I'm sorry, I think that's grave injustice to the people of this country, because accommodation is something, an accommodation, not Western style assimilation. Accommodation has been the spirit of this country because Western style assimilation requires you to convert to their way of life in one form or the other, either overtly or covertly, in order for you to be accepted as part of the particular society. It is this country that makes it possible for people to keep their culture alive.
To be fair to Savarkar here, I think Savarkar would be opposed to this line of defense. He wouldn't say that we weren't accommodating. He would probably say today, let's read into Savarkar what he hasn't said and let's just assume, because I'm going to do it at the moment because no one's going to stop me at the moment. I think Savarkar had moved beyond this idea of just accommodation and not assimilating. I think Savarkar was in favor of assimilation, and he realized the perils of multiculturalism that people are only finding out today. मल्टीकल्चरलिज्म एक बैड वर्ड है. ये पहली बार आर्टिकुलेट शायद डगलस मरी ने किया in the peak of wokeism. So Douglas Murray deserves credit for that. Sitting in England, being a gay British man, in I think debate with Mehdi Hasan. No, a debate with some other people, which was being hosted by Mehdi Hasan, as far as I remember. So that's the first time I hear this concept. That multiculturalism is a bad thing. I again, that's became before I became a Hindutwadi. So I was absolutely flabbergasted that what? Huh? How can someone be against multiculturalism? Are you a fucking racist? Then I realized by Douglas Murray's arguments, and then now everyone knows what are the arguments, that if you let everyone go on with their way of life, that also fucks the cohesion, whatever homogeneity, the basic minimum amount of homogeneity a society requires, and the amount of high trust one hopes to have, all that gets fucked because of multiculturalism. So assimilation is actually important, and that is the Savarkarite secularism. कि हाँ ठीक है, तुमको इस्लाम या क्रिश्चियनिटी छोड़ने को हम नहीं बोल रहे हैं, लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत कंडीशंस होगा. वो कंडीशंस लॉ में नहीं होगा, तुम्हारे वे ऑफ लाइफ में ही थोड़ा बहुत तुम दिखाओ, तुम थोड़ा बहुत हमको गारंटी दो. वो गारंटी एसिमिलेशन ही है. वो फालतू का सिर्फ एकोमोडेशन, तुम वहां घेटो बना के बैठे रहोगे, वो नहीं होगा. घेटोइजेशन इज मल्टीकल्चरलिज्म एंड एकोमोडेशन.
In the most perhaps pristine form possible, so long as it does not come in the way of others. So I would actually make the case that Dharmic civilizationalism is what is crudely dubbed as Hindu nationalism. And as a student of constitutional law, not to claim specific expertise or drop names here, I believe that whenever public morality has been referred to in the Constituent Assembly debates, the reference has been to the reservoir of this country's public morality drawn from the vast ocean of dharma.
देखो कितना प्रेसाइज एक आर्ग्यूमेंट है, प्रेसाइज लाइन ऑफ आर्ग्यूमेंट है. ये सब आज मेन स्ट्रीम है, ये सब शुरू हुआ था इस डिबेट से. दिस इज अ हिस्टोरिक एपिसोड वी आर वाचिंग. वेट, someone asked an important question. What's your opinion on US stopping H-1B visas? I think it was bound to happen sooner or later, because see, if you don't agree with any of the basic tenets of the country's culture, then you don't deserve to be a citizen of that country. And what are the distinctly American values, let's say, if you don't, since I'm accusing NRIs and mostly Bengali NRIs of not having a single American value, except maybe hard work and family, which every country will claim to have, then they will do reservation. तो हार्ड वर्क करोगे या फिर उसके ऊपर रिजर्वेशन दे दोगे तो वो कैसा हुआ? मेरिट, हार्ड वर्क, फैमिली, ये सब सबको ही बोलते हैं, तो वो अमेरिकन भी बोलते हैं. I'm saying that's not a distinctly American value. Distinctly American value है उनका फर्स्ट अमेंडमेंट एंड सेकंड अमेंडमेंट. तुम अभी रैंडम एक ग्रुप ऑफ 100 एनआरआई खड़े कर दो, वहां पे 90 एनआरआई बोलेंगे नहीं, फर्स्ट अमेंडमेंट इज नॉट अ गुड थिंग, नहीं, पूरा फ्री स्पीच शायद ठीक नहीं है. और सेकंड अमेंडमेंट पे तो 99.99 एनआरआई शायद अग्री नहीं करेंगे, बंगालीज तो छोड़ ही दो. तो भाई सिर्फ पैसा खाना है ना, वहां पे बैठ के जाओ, दुबई में जाओ.
And as far as I understand, the concept of dharma is native to this particular land, so to speak, and its culture. And there is one clarification or correction that I think is very, very important, that it's possible to simply reduce the so-called Indic reawakening, so to speak, as identity politics. It's possible to muddle it to the level of identity politics. In my humble opinion, that would be perhaps the most superficial way of looking at it, because scholarship, psychology, political science, as well as students of history strike a very clear distinction between identity and consciousness, which is to say you can be a Hindu in name and still think like a foreigner, because your language and your accent and everything could be something that is completely alien to this land. So according to me, identity is less important and consciousness is more important, which is why if I had to choose between an Aurangzeb and Dara Shikoh, I would choose a Dara Shikoh simply because in consciousness, he was closer to the Hindu spirit, notwithstanding his identity. But Aurangzeb, for all practical purposes, his consciousness and identity were one and the same and completely antithetical to the nature of this land and its accommodative spirit. So that is the distinction. And the third point that I think needs to be made very, very clearly.
Yeah, since I was a new Hindutvadi, I was very, very impressed because he mentioned and gave credit to Darashiko. Also things that I didn't know. दाराशिको नाम का एक आदमी है, हाँ शायद स्कूल में पढ़ा था, और उसने ऐसे बढ़िया काम किए थे, ये मुझे पता चला 2021 में फ्रॉम अ हिंदुत्ववादी गाई. ऐसा है सिचुएशन. हमको नहीं पढ़ाएंगे दाराशिको कितना बढ़िया काम किया था, हमको बोलेंगे औरंगजेब ने कितना बढ़िया काम किया था. तो ऐसे लड़े का एकोमोडेशन तो नहीं चलेगा. एसिमिलेशन मींस दाराशिको's way.
Because Savarkar's work, whether it is capable of being misinterpreted, misconstrued, or interpreted in the right manner, is not the touchstone of Indic Renaissance. Because it is the typical strawman, one of the strawmans that's created is to basically say, Hindutva is ethnocentric, it has a certain obsession with race, and therefore, in its rejection of religious minorities, it is merely presenting another form of xenophobia. The fact of the matter is this land has accommodated several races, and not all of these races are necessarily native to what we understand as Bharat. They have come from several parts of the world, but have ultimately become part of this particular land simply because their way of life has managed to find a way of coexisting with us without actually having a fundamental principle which sees us as subhuman or dehuman. So anyone who is willing to let go of any particular tenet that has the effect of rendering me a second-class citizen or a second-class human being, forget citizen, is welcome in this particular country so long as he doesn't threaten to sever my roots to this particular land. So the idea which I'm trying to present is that Dharmic civilizational reawakening is not a restatement or a sophisticated way of presenting xenophobia or ethnocentrism, because ethnocentrism and xenophobia are the legacies of European-style nationalism, not Bharatiyata, so to speak. We have to be understood in terms
He was openly saying that, no, don't be xenophobes and ethnocentrist.
Ontology, epistemology, and theology in that particular order, not in terms of anthropology. Anthropology is the obsession of the European Westerner, not of Bharatiyas. These clarifications are extremely important.
Yeah, but then anthropology majorly is insane and racist, and the start of anthropology was absolutely eugenicist. But then we have awesome anthropologists as Nicholas Dirks, Declan Quigley, and stuff as well. Maybe statistically completely outliers, but at least there are people like that.
I'll wait for his rebuttal and then I'll go to the next point.
Okay, Shashi Tharoor ka book sale band. Acha, some important questions have come. I'll just take them. Have you seen the recent discovery of India? Yeah, I have seen that podcast. I think up until half of the video. I don't know if he's right or not. That's the problem. And since these days I care so little about Aryan invasion theory, I'm not that fascinated with that line of research. एलियट एंडरसन का कमेंट थोड़ा टाइपो क्लियर करके एक बार फिर से लिखो. Dinner. Yeah, I think Darashiko was mentioned in IC history books that he had a brother, which he killed. I don't remember. I think this was mentioned in history books. Not the achievements of or the contributions of Darashiko. Dada, do you think the rise of right wing, or we can say the rise of Christian right wing politics, can create fascism against India? I think it's only a matter of time. Yes, it's about to happen in our lifetimes. Sham Sharma has spoken because all corrections are over corrections. अब over correction अभी शुरू हुआ है, over correction चलेगा अब. और यूके का हाल सिंस यूएसए से बहुत खराब था, तो वहां पे ओवर करेक्शन भी यूएसए से बहुत ज्यादा होगा. Countries culture, what culture? Native American culture? No, First Amendment and Second Amendment, gun rights and free speech. Yeah, okay.
Shall I? Well, in all fairness, I think you've said some very interesting things, some very provocative, but some that I don't disagree with. And what worries me is that you choose to criticize me on
the brilliance of Desai Deepak. In another context was that how calm he was. He must have been a little nervous, maybe, sitting in front of Shashi Tharoor when nobody knows Desai Deepak at that point. He hasn't written a single book as of yet. He's just a columnist somewhere, and इंजीनियर टर्न लिटिगेटर एक फालतू का फ्रेज बोलते रहते हैं, और हाँ टॉक्स दिए हैं कहीं कहीं जगह पे. up until this point, he wasn't even that viral with his clips. He had given talks in many places. That was all. ऐसा एक आदमी को अचानक शशि थरूर के पास में बिठा दिया जाता है, and he goes ahead and destroys him on his own book tour, then says, no, please let me complete my point, and he's calm as fuck. And the points are so well articulated with so great speaking skills, proper grammar, etc., and clear line of thought, fresh arguments, fresh ideas. वही तो मैक्सिमम लोगों का नहीं होता है, बाकी सब तो हो भी जाएगा.
The basis of setting up a straw man and things I haven't said. I've written rather extensively on something. I think I first wrote about Dharma and the Great Indian Novel 40 years ago. And so it's not as if 32 years ago. And so it's not as if these are not issues I've thought about. I have no difficulty with the notion of the Dharmic civilizational roots of our culture and of our country. But I would rather follow the Vivekananda view of what Hinduism is all about, as I have explained at some length in the book Why I'm a Hindu, rather than the view that has been encapsulated by Savarkar and his followers, including those who are today in power and who have put Savarkar's portrait in parliament.
Revant, not to the extent that it happened after this debate, because up until that point, he was especially famous for saying that I represent the deity. The deity is my client. उस चीजों के लिए he was famous, but not to the extent that his career took off the way it did after this debate.
And hailed him as one of the great icons of Indian nationalism. And the reason is that Vivekananda is very clear. He was extremely proud of his Hinduism. But what was he proud of? He celebrated precisely the inclusiveness of the faith. He said, for example, in Chicago, in that famous series of addresses to the World Parliament of Religions in 1893, he said, I'm proud to speak to you on behalf of a faith.
Look at J. Deepak's expression. Those of you who have seen this debate before. वैसे, how many of you all have not seen this debate? Put your hands up. Those of you all who have seen it, do you all remember the counter that's going to come on this? That's why J. Deepak is smiling. Do we all know the counter? It's going to be absolutely beautiful.
It has taught the world not just tolerance, but acceptance. It's a sentence I read in my teens and that stayed with me all my life, and I kept thinking about it. The more I thought about it, the more profound it struck me as being, because I went to school like most of us studying that tolerance was a good thing. That tolerance was something that you would, a tolerant king is a good king and so on. You learned that in history class. But in fact, tolerance is a basically patronizing idea. It essentially says, I have the truth, you are in error, but I will generously indulge you in your right to be wrong. That's all that tolerance says. Whereas acceptance, if you like the Vivekananda view, says, I believe I have the truth, you believe you have the truth, I will respect your truth, please respect my truth. And this, his description of what Hindu civilization and religion and dharma has taught him is very much what it has taught me.
It's coming.
And from that premise, then, I go to a very different conclusion from Sai Deepak's comments. I don't believe that a young Muslim boy being beaten up in the name of love jihad because he loves a Hindu girl is dharmic. I don't believe that a Dalit or three Dalits being whipped within an inch of their life with a belt because they were doing their job of skinning the carcass of a dead cow is dharmic. I don't believe that this poor young fellow, 2 days after his wedding in Bihar, being tied to a tree and essentially flogged to death while being demanded to chant Jai Shri Ram, I don't think that's dharmic. So when we talk in terms of inclusive dharmic civilization, then all I can say is that those forces that have been unleashed in our country in the name of this political philosophy, whatever you call it and whenever it originated, they unfortunately do not represent.
See, J. Deepak is so fidgety. इतना fidgety है क्योंकि उसके दिमाग में counter argument है. Last 5 minutes से वो देने का chance ढूंढ रहा है. अब देखो counter argument क्या आएगा.
And the virtues of our dharmic civilization, as I have learned them from Vivekananda and from many others. I mean, he wasn't alone, and there were many, many interesting exponents of the faith in contemporary times who built on the work of great thinkers and sayers and scholars. Vivekananda is in a direct line of descent from Adi Shankara. Others have been inspired by many others in the Bhakti movement and so on. So we can go into a detailed discussion, but that's another book. And if you're interested, please read my book, The Hindu Way, or if you're interested in the politics of Hinduism versus Hindutva philosophically, then please read Why I'm a Hindu. But having said all of that, let me come back to this book, which is what I was here to talk to you about. This book does not, in fact, as Sai Deepak seemed to allege, imply that the Constitution is all that we are, or that our civilization has reached its apogee in the Constitution. It's a pretty fine Constitution, highly admired by constitutionalists around the world, but obviously it is the end product of an entire historical evolution. And in our case, I've written I've forgotten in which book, but I have written that, whereas the Italian nationalist Massimo Tapparelli d'Azeglio in the 19th century, when Italy was created out of a mosaic of principalities and statelets, rather famously said, we have created Italy, now all we need to do is create Italians. And I wrote that we never had an equivalent of such a thought in India's nationalism, because Nehru and all the others around them, if asked, would have said, India as a civilization, as an entity, as a land, as an idea, has always existed. We are merely giving to the longings of Indians. So there's never any need to create Indians. Indians exist.
तो हमको ऐसा वाइब क्यों दिया आप लोगों ने भाई? हम 90s किड्स को, 80s किड्स को, 70s किड्स को, especially people who grew up in cities and who studied in English medium schools and stuff. तो हम सबको तो ये सब पता ही नहीं था. अब जाके आप लोग बोलते हैं कि हाँ ये तो ऑब्वियस है, हाँ बाबरी मस्जिद तो तोड़ा गया था, हाँ ज्ञानवापी मस्जिद तो तोड़ के बना गया था, मगर हम बोल रहे हैं कि अब क्या करें इसका. तो no, these were not common knowledge at all. You all hid these facts. अब मतलब कॉर्नर्ड होके ये सब बोल के कोई फायदा नहीं है. These are तो अब दारा शिकोह ने अच्छा काम किया है, वो भी हिंदुत्ववादी से पता चल रहा है. इंडिया के पास में कुछ अच्छा था, वो भी हिंदुत्ववादी से पता चल रहा है. और ये एक अनब्रोकन चेन ऑफ सिविलाइजेशन है, वो भी हिंदुत्ववादी से पता चल रहा है. आप लोगों ने ये सब कुछ भी हमको नहीं बोला.
And in fact, in talking about it, I have argued in many of my writings, and it may even be in this book, that this is not particularly a Hindu idea, though I have great reverence for Adharma, because in fact, whereas as scholars like Diana Eck and so on have said that the territorial configuration of India was essentially sanctified by the endless tracts of pilgrimage from one Hindu shrine to another over literally centuries or even thousands of years, and that's perfectly fine. It's also true that the rest of the world saw us as one, and that, as Maulana Azad pointed out, an Indian Muslim going on the Hajj would be greeted by Arabs, whether he was a Tamil Muslim or a Pathan from the northwest, be greeted as a Hindi, because there was this notion of India or Hind as one coherent civilizational space.
Yeah, this brings to my mind another factor which is associated with the Bloodywood idea, okay, being competent and making India proud on the international stage in front of non-Indians, not in NRI marriages. Okay, I have discussed this earlier on as well. I'll just remind people if they are new viewers of mine. Okay, in American wrestling circles, do you all know this, the new viewers? In American wrestling circles, they have so much respect for Indian wrestlers, all of whom are from backward Haryana, all the women and men from Haryana, who are from just one state of a gigantic country, but compete with countries almost at par, who are completely wrestling countries like Russia, USA, and all the Muslim countries in the Eurasian region. So they have so much respect for those Indian wrestlers that they have coined the term Hindu push-up and Hindu squats for our Dan Baitak and the different way of swinging way of squats that Haryana wrestlers do. Okay, उसको वो लोग बोलते हैं हिंदू पुशअप और हिंदू स्क्वाट्स. It's not a Hindutwadi deep state project. Okay, and I found this out from being in Facebook wrestling discussion groups. Okay, and they have huge respect for Dangal as well for that reason. कि क्योंकि wrestling पे कोई अच्छा मूवी नहीं हुआ है, तो पूरा का पूरा USA जो फैमिली में wrestling है, especially अगर फैमिली में कोई गर्ल चाइल्ड wrestling में है, तो फैमिली hangout मतलब बैठ के दंगल देखो.
So my argument is that it is very, very much something that we can converge upon. Where I'm parting from what I've just heard is in my insistence that recognizing these civilizational values in legal constitutional form by ensuring the equality of all is indeed fundamental to civic nationalism and is explicitly disavowed by many of the votaries of the kinds of doctrines that Deepak is saying. Now, I must admit that since, like most others, I have also believed that the term Hindutva came with Savarkar's book, The Essentials of Hindutva in 1922, and I'm very happy to discover it's not the case. I have to admit that nobody today espousing Hindutva doctrine has put up any monuments to Chandranath Boshu, whereas Savarkar is very much hailed and respected and presented as the fount of those ideas. And the worry about, of course, Savarkar writing is that he was writing very much at a time when very similar ideas were flourishing in Europe. Particularly Italy, Germany, and Portugal and Spain at that time were caught up in very similar notions ethnic nationalism. And it was no accident that Savarkar described Hindus as a race. He did not use the word religion. He used race because he was writing at a period when these ideas of racial purity were sweeping across Europe at the same time. So that, to my mind, discredited much of the origins of his ideas. But now that Deepak tells me there's somebody else who has had a different understanding of Hindutva in the 1890s, I would be very happy to read him. If, on the other hand, if he has echoed a sort of Hindu-ness, a Hindutva, that speaks to the kind of Hinduism that Swami Vivekananda celebrated, then I have no quarrel with him, whereas I do have a strong quarrel with Savarkar as judged by his writings, as well as by the content of his later political life. I think I'll leave the key disagreement to that, because I think that's where Deepak has anchored his arguments, but I see has taken some notes, so I look forward to hearing his counter.
Yeah. Before Deepak gives his absolutely bombastic counter argument, let me just take this question. What are your opinions on Maratha massacres of Bengal Hindus? First of all, it was not a whole homogeneous monolithic Maratha attack on only Bengali Hindus. It was some rogue elements in the Maratha army who were doing this harm to Bengali Hindus. Second of all, it was not just Bengali Hindus who were being harmed, by the way. It was their way of attacking the Muslim sultanates of Bengal. और war जब चलता है डंडा तो civilians पे भी पड़ता है, वैसा ही हुआ था. एंड तो मतलब इकोनॉमी हार्म करना है तो बंगाली हिंदुओं का घरबार भी जला दिया, बंगाली मुस्लिम्स का भी घरबार जला दिया, गांव में जो लोग रहते थे, और जला के भाग गए. सेकंड ऑफ ऑल, many of those people who were doing those acts were getting criticized back home. Okay, कि ये करने को किसने बोला तुमको? Thirdly, Veer Savarkar himself criticizes this. Fourthly, Rabindranath Thakur himself in his poem Shivaji Utsav says that we must move on from this and remember that the Marathas were giving a call for unity to create a nation to Bengali Hindus, and they did not understand that call. And you don't have to take this point just because Rabindranath Thakur said it. Fair enough. But I, in general, believe that past atrocities do not matter if they don't go on today. It's this. My line of argument goes for Muslims as well, Hindus, in inter-caste violence, etc., Maratha on Bengal violence, etc. For everything, unless it goes on today, I do not care, because someone's ancestor or the other was doing bad things to someone's ancestor or the other. Okay. The problem with some people is that they are going on doing those things even today. If today Maharashtra is not doing an attack on West Bengal or Bengalis, and in fact is giving employment to a large bunch of commie Bengalis, I have zero reason to think about this incident. Now, Deepak's counter argument to Vivekananda.
Thrust and responding to it.
So, in the interest of time, am I audible? Yes. In the interest of time, I will stick to specific points made by Dr. Tharoor. First is that he believes that the Hindutva that he subscribes to, or the Hinduness that he subscribes to, is that of Swami Vivekananda. I'm actually happy you said that. Because while Swami Vivekananda was happy to speak of universalism and universal brotherhood from the podium of the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, he was very clear that universalism cannot come at the expense of pixelation of history, and certainly specific disagreements, theological disagreements, which resulted in constant practice of exactly this value called toleration, this civilizing, condescending virtue called toleration, which was resulting in the proselytization of Indians en masse. So much so that at least in two of his works, I'm sure you're aware of it, sir, where he specifically refers to his encounter with a Christian missionary on a ship either back to or from India, where a Christian missionary was constantly spewing venom against the religion of Satan, which is Hinduism. Swami Vivekananda, despite his belief in universal brotherhood, was forced to catch the Christian missionary by the scruff of his collar and threaten him with throwing him overboard. If I may say so, that, according to me, is Hindutva or Hindu resistance in action, which is to say, I'm more than happy to accommodate all your points of view, provided you first stop spewing venom against me in the name of your scripture. So the very same Swami Vivekananda, I'm so happy that you've actually cited him, also went on to identify in, let's say, book after book after book, in fact, in several tomes, the history of invasions from the 8th century, at least until the 16th century. And this is something that he has never pixelated. So the great thing about these stalwarts of civilizational icons is that they were very clear that there is no inconsistency between recognition of the universal character of dharma and what dharmic communities and civilizations have been subjected to in the name of vidharma. Let's not call it adharma, let's call it vidharma. Yeah. This is something that is starkly missing, and that's exactly what I've pointed in my book, which is to say that there is a filter called coloniality or colonial consciousness, which actively prevents this particular country, and specifically the majority of this country, from accessing specific aspects of its past and putting it in deep slumber in the name of secularism. Because just as you have a problem with, let's say, the concept of tolerance, so to speak, European history, and I'm absolutely sure you're aware of this, is specifically clear about the Christian origins and Christian nature of secularism itself. Such being the case, I think when this particular community stands up and says, I've had enough of secularism and I've had enough of this inclusivity that is specifically telling me forget everything. You keep citing Dalits, you keep citing everybody else, but you don't wish to talk about the treatment of Kashmiri Hindus and the specific causes behind it. You don't wish to talk about what exactly has happened in Bengal immediately after elections on the 2nd of May. You don't wish to talk about, let's say, certain pockets being created in Assam in the name of religion, dare I say. You don't wish to talk about what is, according to me, the longest running insurgency in this country, which is the creation of a crown colony in the northeast, and therefore there is Nagalim for something. Please Google up what
Nagalims for Christ, Christian Socialist Rebellion, secessionist movement, which we discussed with my last podcast with Rami ma'am.
They specifically are fighting for. It's Nagalim for, and the religious figure specifically mentioned. With all these insurgencies going on, surprisingly, it is the Hindu who is the constant subject of scrutiny, whereas everybody else is spared scrutiny on the rod.
हाँ भाई, ये longest running insurgency in India है और पता ही नहीं है. इस डिबेट के पहले मैंने नागालिम्स फॉर क्राइस्ट का नाम ही नहीं सुना था. तो ये सब हमको अगर जानना पड़ता है हिंदुत्ववादियों से, तो ऑटोमेटिकली we will become हिंदुत्ववादीज, because that side will come across as more honest and more informative and more awesome as a kid. So go keep losing everything.
Therefore, the point is, the Hindu has proved herself, not himself, herself, because Sabrimala, herself, to be more than open to reform in every possible way, because way before untouchability was abolished under Article 17 of the Constitution, the temple entry movement was initiated by the Maharaja of Travancore in 1936. That was already done. So several people, inward-looking people, were more than happy. If at all the Dharma Shastras warranted it, they were more than happy to say, we have to move on. So therefore, I'm merely saying that this particular community perhaps doesn't get the credit that it deserves, and it gets, let's say, more scrutiny than it deserves, whereas everybody else is spared scrutiny. That's point number one. Point number two, any concept must be understood, as Dr. Tharoor rightly points out, in historical context. I completely understand, but it should not be divorced from the unique cultural experience and historical experience of any community. So nationalism, when spouted by a European who's fundamentally a colonizer, is not the same as nationalism from Savarkar or anybody else who's the victim of colonization at the end of the day, who's witnessed two successive waves of colonization running for at least 1400 years. So to say that when we speak of nationalism, it's the same as European supremacism, I'm sorry to say, is to compare apples with oranges. We're divorcing the entire history and focusing exclusively on the statement. Here, when we speak of nationalism, it is merely a call for throwing off the yoke of colonialism of two kinds. Therefore, this should not be compared with Europeans for the simple reason that you're comparing the victim with the oppressor and the aggressor. That, according to me, there couldn't have been a greater insult to a victimized and a colonized community. That's point number two. And I'll just make one more point, which is Constitution. Of course, it's a fine document. It's a great document. It must be worshipped. Yes, I get all of that. But the point is, Dr. Ambedkar, after having crafted this Constitution, during the Nehruvian dispensation, rues the fact that he actually created this Constitution because he was seeing it distorted under the Nehruvian dispensation, and he says very clearly that I regret the day that I was given this particular task of having to draft this particular document, because now I realize that a terrible piece of document can be used for the betterment of the people in the hands of good people, but a fantastic piece of document, a legal document, can be completely misused in the hands of scoundrels. I'm not even paraphrasing, I'm using his words exactly. So therefore, the fact of the matter is, the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution regretted having.
I think Desai Deepak's what set him on this path, or not what set him on this path. What made him stand out from all the other Hindutwadis, and what made him come up with such a fresh and different set of ideas, I think started with because of his extensive reading of Ambedkar, which no other Hindutvadi had been doing. I think Kushal, Abhijit, Mitra, they have read Ambedkar extensively. J.S. Deepak had read Ambedkar inside out, it seems.
Having to live during his lifetime to see the constitution and its values being completely thrown to the winds. That's point number 3. And the last point that I think is extremely important is the reference to Diana Eck, her book called India's Sacred Geography. Surprisingly, when she refers to India's sacred geography, she chooses not to refer to it as Bharat. She still focuses on India, which is exactly why I decided to call my book India That is Bharat, because Article 1 speaks of India that is Bharat. Unfortunately, Bharat has been effectively relegated to the margins, whereas India is currently surviving at the expense of Bharat. The problem is, if you look at the introduction of Diana Eck's book, because I've had the specific opportunity to deal with it in my book, she recognizes the fact that as far as this country is concerned, it was created as a consequence of a network of pilgrimage centers. And therefore, there's a triple matrix of nature, culture, faith, epistemology, and patriotism coming together to create this entity called Bharat. But there again, she says, but Hindu nationalism, no. So the problem is, it's surprising that she regurgitates the very same scholarship of Radhakumar Mukherjee of 1914. Yeah. She comes out with the very same scholarship on sacred geography of Jadunath Sarkar, of Farsi Majumdar. Oh. We are more than happy to cite a foreign scholar by the name Diana Eck as opposed to Radhakumar Mukherjee, Jadunath Sarkar, or Farsi Majumdar, which according to me is proof of coloniality or colonial consciousness, so to speak, that we still seek the validation of someone sitting in Harvard. So it has to be someone of Indian origin educated abroad, or it has to be preferably a Westerner who's educated abroad. All of them telling us, of course, you're great, you have a validation, you have our blessings. So that's exactly why I said, perhaps we should have, let's say, a face-off as far as India That is Bharat and Battle of Belonging is concerned, simply because Diana Eck represents everything that is wrong with Western academia. She, according to me, represents what's happening on the September 11th, which is dismantling Global Hindu Conference.
We are not discussing that.
I'll leave that.
Very quickly, but very briefly, just touch on these 3-4 points. First on
अरे ये जो एकेडमिक रिगर है और प्रिपरेशन है, ये ठीक है, ये यूजुअली ब्राह्मण्स में होता है, ये हम सबको करना है और वर्कआउट करना है. दैट इज द ओनली वे फॉर हिंदुत्व टू फ्लरिश, फॉर हिंदुइज्म टू फ्लरिश, फॉर इंडिया टू फ्लरिश.
On this question of the word secularism and its English, its European origins, I fully understand, because secularism came up very much in the context of a certain history of church-state relations, and that's where it came from. But I have said in my writings for 30 years that I'm not particularly fond of the word secularism. If you look up an English language dictionary, secularism implies a distancing from religion. Whereas in India, we practice secularism to encourage a profusion of religion. So in practice, I say that pluralism is a more appropriate word. Bahusvarata in Malayalam, and I suppose also in Hindi, that we have this diversity in our country that's part of our reality. So secularism is simply shorthand because everyone has been using it for so long, they're used to it. When I say pluralism, I usually get a blank stare, but that's all I mean. The diversity, a variety of people in India, which I think we should all accept. That's certainly what I believe in. On the question of Vivekananda's robust refusal to accept being insulted, I'm 100%.
Yeah. What happened in the past should remain in the past, provided it doesn't go on today. So is Bengal Khada going on today? BJP Assam has kept 12 lakh Bengali Hindus in detention camp with social discrimination. 12 lakh Bengali Hindus in detention camp. Who's paying for those detention camps? 12 lakh Bengali Hindus? Is this number correct? And they are illegal immigrants who can't avail CA and stuff. And detention camp means social discrimination. Detention camp can't be along with social discrimination. Detention camp means you are separated from the rest of the society anyway. So if they are in detention camps, they are going to be sent to Bengal when CA happens, right? That though he had hinted that वो असम में घुसने के बाद इंडिया में कहाँ जाएंगे वो मेरा डिस्कशन है with other chief ministers. But first of all, we are going to stop illegal immigration, and it's the homeland for any Hindus.
100% with him on that. After all,
are there big enough detention camps to host 12 lakh Bengali Hindus plus the non-Hindus as well who are illegal immigrants? Or are you saying that someone from Kolkata went to Assam and got sent to the detention camp along with the 12 lakh Bengali Hindus? Where do you get these numbers?
What does he say? He says, I am proud to speak to you on behalf of a faith that has taught the world not just tolerance but acceptance.
Oh, social discrimination of minority Bengali Hindus of Assam. That I don't give a shit about because that happens in every state. So in Kolkata, I got discriminated forever for having dark skin. I went to study in the North Bengal region, in the hilly regions. I got discriminated for being Bengali by Nepalis in Bengal. So हर जगह पे थोड़ा बहुत racism तो होता ही है. Yes, it's bad. Yes, it should go away. I'm not going to single out Assam for being distinctly racist only towards Bengalis.
Which is also a message to people of other faiths. Don't try and tolerate me. Accept me. I will accept you. I will accept that your Jehovah, your Ahura Mazda, your prophet, Yahweh, or anybody is, as far as I'm concerned, as valid a way of imagining the divine as mine is. He loved quoting the Shiva Mahimna Stotram, which essentially says that as various rivers, some crooked, some straight, flow down various mountainsides and end up in the same sea, so also all ways of worship will end up at the same divine. That fundamental idea that Vivekananda made, I would argue, the bedrock of his preaching, and I'm proud to say I've probably read every word the man ever spoke in print that appeared in print, including obscure speeches in Lahore and here and there. He was a the great advantage for me was that, of course, Vivekananda did the bulk of his preaching and writing in English, and therefore I didn't feel I was reading his ideas mediated through a translator, and that made it all the more interesting. But in any case, his ideas were very, very clear, and I have no problem with standing totally and resolutely behind my support for him, because he was not an unself-critical Hindu. Unlike these gentlemen of the day today, or not so gentlemen, who are, in my view, giving my Hinduism and Vivekananda's Hinduism a bad name through their conduct. He was somebody who, for example, he once said, it may astonish you today, 120 years later, he said, I've been wandering through the villages of India as a sadhu seeking alms, but how much better it would be if people like me, if other sadhus would go from village to village teaching science and mathematics. It's so much more useful for India than the spiritual quest in which we're embarked. This is Vivekananda. And I think sometimes we don't recognize.
Yeah, that at one point, of course, sadhus didn't go around teaching science and stuff. But I'm not going to put Somen Balti's question on the screen because of the words he used. But yes, the point the problem he's pointing out is actually true. Lower caste Hindus of Bengal don't have the resources to come here with full preparation and stuff. Upper caste Hindus who do come illegally and then settle do have those resources. They take the same route as Muslims के यहाँ पे कोई नेता वेता थोड़ा ब्यूरोक्रेट हायर कर लिया और फेक डॉक्यूमेंट बना लिया. Yes, lower caste Hindus will face the brunt of that. I mean, it makes sense. It would be believable that if such a discrimination happens because they are the illegals who didn't come with any preparation. Yeah, I think it's true. It's very common.
Nice. That there's been this very healthy reformist inquiring quest within those who are amongst the greatest votaries of Hinduism. So an uncritical defense of every kind of bad behavior that is currently being taken out in the name of Hindutva, and particularly the whataboutery that says that we have done bad things, but those guys have also done bad things, to my mind is not the idea. As far as I'm concerned, our duty as Indians is to reform ourselves. And if you want to really bring it down to religion, then as a Hindu, I believe that I would have every entitlement to judge my fellow Hindus when they fall short of the Dharmic standards that I've been brought up with. But it's not my place to tell a Muslim how to be a good Muslim or a Christian how to be a good Christian. I can tell them under the Constitution how to be a good citizen, and what of their conduct is not acceptable to me as an Indian citizen. But as a Hindu, my business is only with my fellow Hindus, and if that's the prism through which you want to see the debate, I will continue to criticize Hindus when they misbehave. And I think that those are the three main points. But broadly speaking, let me stress, there has to be some common ground between these views, because ultimately the Constitution is what it is. And we even have the principal votary of Hindutva ideology today, the Prime Minister himself, saying the Constitution is his holy book. So there is a level of acceptance. I've actually asked Mr. Mohan Bhagwan whether he stood by his predecessor's rejection of the Constitution. And he said, look, those were the days when the Constitution was being debated by everybody. I'm not bound by what was said in the 1950s. And if that's truly where he stands, I respect him for that. And he says, okay, his movement will work within the parameters of our Constitution. That's already a very useful meeting ground and a very useful basis on which the government and the opposition should be able to proceed. But I think it's important to recognize that the nation we celebrate has to be an inclusive one, has to be one where nobody is judged by the faith they practice, but by the content of their character, by the behavior that they indulge in, and by the values they stand for. And disagreement within those parameters is entirely acceptable in a diverse democracy. As I've said many years ago, the thing about India that I celebrate, and I said this to foreign audiences, is that in a country like ours, with all the diversities we have, you don't really need to agree all the time, so long as you agree on the ground rules of how you will disagree. To me, those ground rules are the rules established in the Constitution. That's the civic nationalism that I celebrate. And within those rules, we can happily disagree, provided those fundamental rights are not challenged. That a Muslim is not told that somehow he is less legitimate a participant in the national conversation because his gods are found in a country other than this holy land of India.
No, because he refuses to assimilate. Yeah, so the point here is Srijan's point and the counter arguments given by Bocharidi are all that that racism between Assamese and Bengali people, or between Bengali people and Bengali people if they have dark skin and fair skin, etc., or caste-based bad behavior. The solution for all of that is Hindu unity. And when we discuss Hindu unity, if you bring up these issues, you are just distracting us from the core issue. If you are a commie and you do that, of course, I have nothing to say to you, because, yeah, you would look for ways to dissuade us from the path anyway. But if you claim to be a Hindutvadi, or let's say who realizes the troubles of partition and the reasons for partition and Bangladesh, etc., and then you say those things, you are wasting all of our times, because what we are doing is the antidote to all of these problems as well. So Hindutvadi, Hindutvadi thinking and Hindutva and all, they are not important because Assamese behave badly with us, and Marathis sent goons to burn Bengali Hindus' house down. Those are just deviations and pointless, distractive talking points, which are naive at best and evil and conniving at worst.
That, to my mind, is not acceptable. To me, from my reading of my faith, my civilization, and my country's history, I think I'll leave it there, but I invite you all to read the book, engage with it, and see for yourself whether the arguments I've made are even partly persuasive. I recognize that many of you are attracted to another point of view, but I think it's important to bear in mind that these ideas are ideas that have come as a product of a somewhat long period of reflection, reading, and immersion in these ideas. They're not offered without thought, so I hope I can offer them to you for further thought, reading, and reflection. Thank you very much, Nandita.
Thank you. Before I open it up for questions from the audience, I'd like to ask you one thing. How did you choose this cover?
Oh.
It's a very violent cover.
Well, covers are chosen
switch off your mobiles.
Covers are chosen by the constitutional provisions. The letter of the constitutional provisions was followed, but not their spirit. In other words, whereas to amend Article 370, you needed the consent of the state.
Here is already started.
Point about history, we can disagree, and you can give me footnoted facts for your.
We'll check out J. Deepak's responses here, because it's not a debate exactly; it's just some Q&A, interesting session.
Interpretation, and I can find the same for you.
On this question, I'd like to weigh in. It's important because I would not be doing justice to my own position on this particular subject if I didn't speak up on the subject. Be it in journalism or history, I think it is currently boxed by the tyranny of what I call forced symmetry and balance, which is to say,
let's check out the question here as well as Shashi Tharoor's response to this. What were they talking about? Let's see.
And oppressive landlords and the colonial power. It's so broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, so they won't hear you without the mic.
I'm Srijit Sai.
Keep it very close to you.
I'm Srijit Sai, and
Much
I'm a
better.
student of information technology.
I'm sorry?
A student of information technology.
Okay.
So on the 23rd, last month, you referred to as the Malabar Hindu genocide as a false memory. What about this is a false
As a?
memory? False memory.
No, I mean, I think what I said was historians have written reams about all of this. There are multiple views. There are at least 3 different interpretations I can identify about what happened in the so-called Malabar Rebellion and so on.
So-called.
There is if you like, the leftist view that it was essentially a class struggle between oppressed peasants and oppressive landlords and the colonial power. It so happened that the oppressed peasants were overwhelmingly Muslim and the oppressive landlords were overwhelmingly Hindu, and that's why the communal coloring. That's one view. There is indeed the view of what you call the Hindu genocide, which sees it very much through the prism of the assaults on Hindus that took place. So that also took place in the later part of the rebellion. The initial rebellion did not have a communal coloring, but I'll concede that aspects of it did gain that. There's also a third view, which points to the complexity of going with either the first or the second view. First of all, the geographical differences. In different parts of Malabar, you had different experiences.
Yes. I didn't say ethnic identity doesn't matter. I don't think it matters too much, but I can't make ethnic identity matter for me just because it mattered to Lalu Prasad Yadav. But more importantly, all sorts of racism that goes on inside Bengal, what about that? And all sorts of racism that goes on against Biharis, what about that? All sorts of racism that goes on against Biharis all across the country and inside Bengal, what about that? How much of that is just as a response to the bad behavior that was done by Biharis against Bengalis? No one knew about that even. It's only it's become a recent talking point because of Rantak Pakko. It's not been forever common knowledge. Okay, so the racism against Biharis has just because they've been poor and they don't have culture, they don't have good music, and they have dirty, unhygienic lifestyles. So that's going to be the future of Bengalis as well because of poverty, and that's the way Bengalis are being treated again in the rest of the country for those same reasons. But what I want you to tell me what is distinctly evil about Bengalis being the victim versus Bengalis doing racism against other people and Bengalis being racist to each other for being from Midnapur or for having dark skin.
There are anecdotes after anecdotes of Muslim sheltering Hindus and Hindu sheltering Muslims and so on. It was not a straightforward, as we've seen, frankly, in the riots that sadly have benighted our country even in the last 30 years. There have been human beings reaching out across the communal divide, and it was not one of this kind of unquestioning identification with the religious community. And that there was also no doubt about the anti-colonial aspects of many of the stands taken. And therefore, because of the complexity of all this, to reduce these three, as I said, at least three, because there are others. I think the Hindu, or one of the papers, I think it was the Hindu, had a rather lengthy article, perhaps in the Kerala edition, that multiplied, that gave all the multiple possibilities. I said that it would be unwise to go for any one of them. Yes, it is a false memory to reduce all of this to just one interpretation. And I think that in many ways, one of the interesting things about history is that you can read multiple accounts of the same events and come to your own conclusions depending on the prism through which you see them. And I will be amongst the first to admit that no one view is necessarily superior to another, but that definitely the duty of the historian is to dig up as much material as available and put it out there. And that all history writing is subjective. I concede my attack on British colonialism omitted certain good things the British did, or at least that they feel that they were good things that they did. I don't believe.
Do you know, Srijan, why didn't Muslims leave Gujarat? Why didn't that exodus happen? Why did that exodus happen in Bihar, Assam and stuff? And why did Bengalis do that exodus, finally leave, but Muslims never left Gujarat? What was the difference between Gujarat of 2002, 3, 4, 5 and versus Assam, Bihar? One was a gigantic economic hub. West Bengal still gets the benefits of being an economic hub once upon a time. And Assam and Bihar were never economic hubs. Bihar was economic hub last time Chanakya was alive. So you see, if Bihar and Assam were that economically prosperous, even that exodus would not have happened. People would have made some negotiations and kuch na kuch karke, they would have found a way to stay in Bihar.
They did them for us. That's another matter. The truth is that in looking at the vast amount of information out there, you select the points and facts that suit a particular narrative. And that's what I think those who take either just the peasants versus landlords view or just the Hindu versus Muslim view are also doing. I think the story is much more complex than either of those narratives.
I respectfully disagree with you. But
yeah, sure. But that's the point about history. We can disagree. And you can give me footnoted facts for your interpretation. And I can find the same for you.
On this question, I'd like to weigh in. It's important because I would not be doing justice to my own position on this particular subject if I didn't speak up on the subject. Be it in journalism or history, I think it is currently boxed by the tyranny of what I call forced symmetry and balance, which is to say that you throw up three different views and say all of them are equally valid. And therefore, you must leave it to people to choose which of these is most comfortable to their position, as opposed to focusing on the more objective aspects of history, which are demonstrable through clear evidence and facts. How do you judge whether an incident has a communal, let's say, flavor to it, or let's say a communal tinge to it or not, is not just on the basis of who was killed and who are the perpetrators, but on the basis of stated goals and intentions. Let us not forget that as far as that movement is concerned, the larger goal was to actually express solidarity with the establishment of the Ottoman Caliphate, so to speak, and to say that the dismantling of the particular Caliphate is an attack on Islam, so to speak. Therefore, to say that this was a peasant rebellion, 20 years down the line, we'll have the very same historians saying that because most of the best houses in Kashmir were owned by Kashmiri Hindus, what happened there was again a rebellion of the proletariat, so to speak. That's what we'll be told next. In fact, that theory has already started, that the problem that most of the people had there was because of the affluence of Kashmiri Hindus. Therefore, what happened there was the same thing. You have another line of history basically saying that the person who demolished Somnath 12 times was doing this to effectively free the people from the oppression of the Brahmin there. Even that history has started. So therefore, I'm sorry to say this can't be accepted, because the fact of the matter is there is a clear solidarity with the movement which is Islamic in nature. Second, you see both the Hindu landlords as well as the British colonial masters, so to speak, as co-conspirators who are holding on to lands belonging to a particular religion. Clearly, the communal flavor of the particular entire movement is out in the open. There is really nothing to judge after that. The fact that a few people who were killed also belong to the same religion of the perpetrators doesn't change the fact that the intentions were clearly communal in nature. Most importantly, it is to the credit of a lot of people who must have sheltered Hindus, no doubt. But let us not obfuscate and indulge in obfuscation when we say that the intention behind the, or let's say the trigger behind the movement, was manifestly, avowedly, irrefutably, and undoubtedly communal in nature. That is something that must be accepted, because otherwise we will start laying the groundwork for, let's say, for apology for everything that has happened in this country. I mean, if we are absolutely clear about what happened in 2002 in another part of the country, giving it a religious flavor, why is it that we are so hell-bent on whitewashing everything else? I think the only competitor here, I'm sorry, the only competitor here is Asian Paints or Mirror, like they're doing a better job of whitewashing facts.
This incident is not even mentioned in this book, so this honestly has nothing to do with the book launch we're doing today. But I should mention that there was a Khilafat movement which the mainstream political parties, including the nationalist movement under Mahatma Gandhi, had endorsed. And it took...
Bal Gangadhar Tilak also endorsed. Sri Aurobindo said, "What? What are you doing? Don't do this. Don't support them."
Various forms throughout the country, mostly peaceful, and in some places the movement descended into violence, number one. But the Khilafat movement was not purely a Muslim movement, because non-Muslims were officially identified with supporting it, starting with Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian National Congress of the day. Secondly, if you read, for example, there's a letter published in the Hindu in Madras by the man whom the Hindutva movement today loves to demonize, Varim Kunat Muhammad Haji, who was the man who was then finally caught, arrested, and executed by the British, and who is demonized today as this communal slayer, and who in his lifetime wrote to the Hindu and insisted they publish it and threatened the Hindu with violence if they didn't publish it, saying that, as far as he was concerned, there was nothing communal about agitation, there were Hindus fighting on his side, and that people of any faith would be welcome to take refuge in his lands, which at that point were not under British control, and that he was essentially there to fight against colonial oppression. Now, when there are contemporary documents...
Colonial oppression is the kind of bogies that Rantak Pakho gives us. Ke, हाँ, हिंदू यूनिटी का बात करो, नहीं मराठा ने क्या किया था. तो हाँ, यहाँ पे आरएसएस भी बोलता है कास्टिज्म का क्या करे, हाँ ब्रिटिश ने किया था. तो यहाँ पे हिंदू मुस्लिम वायलेंस हुआ, वो कॉलोनियलिज्म के वजह से हुआ था. वी आर फाइटिंग अगेंस्ट कॉलोनियलिज्म. हर जगह पे कॉलोनियलिज्म घुसा दो.
Speaking to a different interpretation of somebody's view. Now, this chap, this poor fellow, the Indian Council of Historical Research, has decided to strike his name from the list of martyrs of British colonialism in which he has appeared for decades, because suddenly he's being demonized as communal. I despair, because, I mean, this is the fellow's own words that you're talking about that are being disregarded in favor of somebody else's demonization of his role in this rebellion. But as I say, none of this has anything to do with my book, or indeed with the notion of nationalism. Neither him nor those who extol him today have turned out to be anti-national or have left India for Pakistan or anything like that. So let's stay where we are on the battle of belonging. They all belong.
Okay. Perhaps Dr. Ambedkar has said a lot on this particular subject. You must read on this.
I think we'll take one question there.
He recommended a book. फिर जाके देखो साइड में जाके पाकिस्तान और पार्टीशन ऑफ इंडिया पढ़ लो. Yeah, okay. This question is not that important as far as I remember. Now let's get to Vikram Sampath versus Shashi Tharoor. That will be the last debate we check out today, okay? That is important because there Shashi Tharoor admits that the way history has been taught to us was done specifically in the interest of nation building, okay? Vikram Sampath is very polite and nice guy, he's not this AK-47 verbal thing. So it was not that entertaining, but it was very effective nonetheless. You are proving my point. In Barak Valley and Tripura, most Bengali Hindus vote BJP and are hardcore Hindutwadi, but they keep their Bengali identity intact. Yes. So in comment section, you don't see many West Bengal Bengalis. What does that mean? The second half, I don't get it. But yes, in the Barak Valley and Tripura, they were able to maintain. Yes, it's a good thing that they maintained. So how is that a counter to anything I was saying? But the second part, though, yes, I don't see many West Bengal Bengalis because we don't, okay, crib and complain about Assamese people. Yeah. Okay, Sampath and Tharoor.
Hello and welcome once again to the India Today conclave.
Okay, before this starts, let's again take a push-up break and a bit of stretching break. I'll come back after 3-4 minutes.
তোমার মতো আছে কত কে জানে আমারে অভিধানে, অথচ আমি একা কেন হেঁটেছি তাকে বা জানে। তোমার মতো আছে কত কে জানে আমারে অভিধানে, অথচ আমি একা কেন হেঁটেছি তাকে বা জানে। দেরি হয়ে গেল পৌঁছতে, পথ ভুলেছি আবার। আমি যদি ভুলে গিয়ে থাকি, মনে রাখার কি দরকার? দেরি হয়ে গেল পৌঁছতে, পথ ভুলেছি আবার। আমি যদি ভুলে গিয়ে থাকি, মনে রাখার কি দরকার? এ হাওয়াতে যদি দিই মিশিয়ে গানে, তাতে কোনো ক্ষতি হয়তো সরে গেছে আমার পায়ের তলার মাটি। এ হাওয়াতে যদি দিই মিশিয়ে গানে, তাতে কোনো ক্ষতি হয়তো সরে গেছে আমার পায়ের তলার মাটি। আরো দূরে চলে যাব আমি, শুধু তোমার দিকে, যেখানে পথ মিশে গেছে শুধু তোমার চোখে। আরো দূরে চলে যাব আমি, শুধু তোমার দিকে, যেখানে পথ মিশে গেছে।
Okay, so why Bengali Muslims of Bangladesh massacred Bihari Muslim Ummah brothers? Yes, they massacred Bihari Muslim Ummah brothers. That's why so many of them stayed back and are today Bengali in Bangladesh. Ethnicity matters, yeah. That's why we have a different country for Bangladesh. Exactly.
To a very special session that we have, Bulls in Our Memory Shop, debating heritage, history, and hubris. Rather intriguingly titled, but let me try and decode it in a way which is perhaps a little simpler. We live, ladies and gentlemen, in an age of contested legacies of historical figures. We are rewriting, reclaiming, reinterpreting history in a manner that only seems to further polarize society today? Is there a way forward where we can bring together an objective rendition of our history without breeding sharp social and political divisions? That's what we want to address today. And we have two eminent speakers who hopefully will try and demystify this topic for us. Vikram Sampath is...
Ninar, diet tips is a bit risky proposition because of legalities. I can say what I do. Stay as far as away from dairy as possible. That's what I do. Meat, though, definitely no, because of cruelty and because of the estrogen that's given to animals. And I do intermittent fasting a lot. I really love intermittent fasting. And intermittent fasting के वक्त बहुत पानी पीना है. पेट खाली में intermittent fasting नहीं करना चाहिए. And fast has to be broken with protein shakes. The priority is protein shake. If not protein shake, then something else. And protein shake में pea protein, PEAP. Pea protein is preferable because it's mechanically extracted protein. Soy milk, almond milk, soy protein वगैरह में chemically extracted protein है. और whey protein तो है dairy. तो उसमें तो गौ माता का एस्ट्रोजन जो है वो भी रहेगा. ও আচ্ছা, লোল চোদা বেই বালের কথা বলে এতক্ষণ বড় সিরিয়াস নিলাম বাল ছিটতে কে.
The author of a two-part biography of Savarkar. The second part is just out. Historian and author Dr. Vikram Sampath is joined by Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who is not just a politician, but I think at times would rather be first described as a Sahitya Akademi Award winner for his writing, including his most recent book, which looks at the issue of nationalism. So thank you both very much for joining us. And Shashi, let's kick it off straight with you by asking this question, which is often being asked: what are these fundamental fault lines that underlie contemporary history debates, history writing today? Is it Nehruvians versus the Hindutvavadis? Is it left versus right? Is it constitutionalists versus those who see an India that stretches into antiquity? What really defines the history debate today?
I think what's happened, Rajdeep, is that
विक्रम संपत को दिखा के जैसे हिंदुत्ववादीज बोला, उससे याद आया कि recently दीपालदार posted a picture, okay, कि I'm in the presence of greats, ऐसा कुछ लिख के कि his book was there with Shashi Tharoor's recent book and Vikram Sampath's book, but the interesting cheeky thing that the booksellers did was कि बीच में दीपालदार का बुक रखा, राइट हैंड साइड में विक्रम संपत का बुक रखा, लेफ्ट हैंड साइड में शशि थरूर का बुक रखा.
Is that what has opened up in the last few years with the ascent of Moditva, if you like, Hindutva plus the personality cult of Mr. Modi in power and the followers they both attract. What has changed, I think, is that an issue which many of us grew up assuming had been long settled has now reopened fundamentally. And that goes back to the founding of the Republic, the moment of partition, because partition didn't happen, as you remember, the split in the nationalist movement didn't happen over ideology. It wasn't Marxist versus capitalist. It didn't happen over geography. It wasn't North versus South. It happened on one key question. The question was, is religion the determinant of our nationhood? And those who argue that, yes, religion was their identity and that made them a nation, they left and they created Pakistan. And everyone else who remained pretty much of any consequence, starting with Mahatma Gandhi, embracing Nehru, Maulana Azad, Sardar Patel, Rajendra Prasad, the works, they all said, no, our freedom struggle was for everyone. And of course, Dr. Ambedkar then enshrined this in a constitution debated over 2.5 years before being adopted, which enshrined that principle that India will be a secular, pluralistic state with room for everyone, irrespective of what their color of skin was, what the language they spoke at home, what religion they had or chose to worship, what caste they belonged to, that as long as they were citizens of this republic, everyone would be equal. And that fundamental idea was, I think, core to the evolution of Indian politics for the next 6 decades plus. And now we have a different ethos in power, which argues that no, India is fundamentally a Hindu country, and that everybody else here is either a guest or an interloper, and that the institutions of the state, the laws of the state, the practices of the state must reflect an allegiance to a certain cultural, civilizational understanding of India, which has nothing to do with the idea of India enshrined in the Constitution. And that, I think, is the fundamental fault line, because it is, people keep saying no one gave you the right to have your own idea of India. My answer is, I'm afraid my idea of India is the idea in the Constitution. Where does yours come from?
You want to answer that? Where does yours come from?
which was there in the Hindu Mahasabha draft constitution as well.
The suggestion that Shashi Tharoor is making is that the fundamental fault line lies in how we, in a way, identify ourselves as Indians. Do we identify ourselves in India through the constitution, or do we identify ourselves through religious identity?
Rajdeep, as a non-politician and as a historian, I'd like to answer it from that perspective. That we might be politically independent, but I think our minds are far from decolonized. Particularly this finds its manifestation in scholarship, in historiography, where we've very, very faithfully been adherents of that infamous Macaulay's Minute of 1835, that the whole role of education is to create a class of people who are
ওরে আমার মিল্টন ফ্রিডম্যান এতক্ষণ আসামিজদের খিস্তি করে এখন হঠাৎ দলিতদের রিজার্ভেশন দিয়েছে, টাকা দিচ্ছে, তাতে তোমার কেন ঝাড় জ্বলছে হঠাৎ করে? দলিত বাঙালিদেরকে দেয়নি বলে নাকি?
interpreters who are only in color and blood Indian, but in our morals, opinions, tastes, and intellect, we are English. And this manifests, it's probably most germane in the way history is written in India. And I'm not making it political at all. I mean, the first...
No, you're welcome to make it political. It is political, let's be honest.
So the first brush that a young Indian will have with the history of her country is the textbooks. And what does she see there? The story of her country is almost shown in third person as though it belongs to some other nation. While it's not my case to argue that the role of history or historians is to generate pride and hysteria and jingoism and all of that, the converse also holds, that to denigrate your past, to feel a constant sense of apology about it, I think that's been the bane of historiography.
No, up until class 6, 7, it could be argued up until even ICSC ज़्यादा हो जाएगा, नहीं तो उसके बाद critical thinking बनाना और भी tough हो जाता है. But up until class 8, 9, history should be taught only for jingoism and national pride and वो जो एक confidence आता है because of knowing that your country was great भाई. उस वक्त पे कोई लड़का कुछ दिखाने का जरूरत नहीं है कि देखो हमारे ancestors से क्या गलती हुआ था.
Because sadly, even at the heights of the British Raj, you had space for nationalist historians, Jadunath Sarkar, Radhakumar Mukherjee, R.C. Majumdar, V.K. Rajwade, so many of them, Bhandarkar, C.V. Vaidya. But then sadly, post-independence, and I think the Congress party unwittingly gave away that space of historiography to the stranglehold of Marxist historians. And in a discipline like this, which thrives on multiplicity of views, which thrives on dissent, discussion, debate, differences of opinion, healthy discussions, I think the thraldom with which academic historiography, I'm talking of, which has been largely controlled by a clique of what we would call as leftist historians, I think it's distorted history and created several fault lines. I'll just state one or two. The story of India is a story of invaders. From their perspective, we've not reclaimed that. So a young person, again, who reads the story of India, it's a long litany of invasions, starting from that myth of the Aryan invasion theory, to a series of battles that we have lost. We're a nation of losers, it seems to most people, that the very fact that we are around as a civilization shows there must have been some battles we also won, and the resistance that was put, which is...
Yeah, this is why I'm saying that class 8 up until class 8 तो definitely pure jingoism, nothing fucking else. Because especially in the generation of people like Boishalidi, there were so many other social support systems and joint family, etc. Like you are growing up with 5-6 brothers and stuff, or playing 3-4 sports all the time. तो वहाँ पे ऐसा था, और then much healthier food than today. So no mental health propaganda, etc. In that situation, even if you grew up with that jingoism, that lack of confidence and that inferiority complex about your own culture and stuff, that did not affect your persona to too much of an extent. It did affect to a large extent, of course. People grow up to be Jayant Bhandaris every now and then. But in my generation onwards, it's an absolutely disastrous thing to do, even because of mental health. People are growing up with absolutely zero confidence in themselves if they are reading those books. Now, though, that cat is out of the bag. It's not going to happen anymore because of online viral clips of Sanjeev Sanyal, Sampath, etc. But up until my generation, when there was no Hindutva discourse, and there was only your ancestors are bad, your ancestors are bad, your ancestors are bad, and there are no joint family, social support systems, everyone's kind of more secluded in their growing up, they are not playing sports, they are eating bullshit, high calorie, addictive meals all day. In that situation, that education system is absolutely disastrous for mental health. So class 8, 9, up until 8 at least, pure jingoism.
curiously underplayed or subjugated in our history books. The other thing, we are sitting in Delhi, but the historiography of India is extremely Delhi-centric. Both of us come from below the Vindhyas. I think stories from our part of the country don't find mention as much as some obscure dynasties which are bigoted, Lodhis and Khiljis find incommensurate mention in books. The Vijayanagar Empire or the Chola Empire, the Rashtrakutas, Satavahanas, Pallavas, the Travancore rulers, the Mysore Wadiyars, the Ahoms of Northeast, the Nagas, Tripuris, the rulers of Manipur. I think India needs to reclaim her history from Delhi. And these are these constant battles that keep happening in historiography.
Yeah, and the weird fucking part is that the Dravidians go around saying that his Indian education system is so Delhi-centric. The first time I heard this argument was from Sandeep Sanyal. कि भाई दिल्ली का हिस्ट्री पूरा इंडिया का हिस्ट्री के नाम पे चला रहा है. And remember Sandeep Sanyal quotes like, why do we need to study about obscure empires like empire नहीं छोटा मोटा जमींदारी like Lodi dynasty and all, while leaving out all these other dynasties in the south. तो संदीप सान्याल द्रविडियन का भी अलायंस हो सकता है, मगर वो तो सुनेंगे नहीं संदीप सान्याल का पूरा बात.
And also, a refusal to acknowledge the darker elements, the darker aspects of Indian history, particularly medieval India with Islamic invasions, trying to brush that under the carpet. American historian Will Durant had called the Islamic invasion of India as the bloodiest chapter of human history. But does that find a mention in our books in the way it should? We labor under this false assumption that talking about the truth will upset contemporary social issues. But dare I say that national unity or social cohesion cannot stand, the edifice of national unity or social cohesion cannot stand on the shaky and false foundations of whitewashed history. So face the truth in the eye. History worldwide offers these spaces to heal, to relive the past, get over it, make peace with it, move on. I think we've not done that. And that is one reason these battles keep happening. What we saw in Ayodhya, what we keep seeing all the time, these renaming of cities, these are a manifestation of that same idea that somehow someone is going to feel bad if you speak the truth. And so we need to push all the muck under the carpet and put deodorant. At some point, the stink will show up. And that's what
I agree with Vikram.
Basically, Vikram wants India to reclaim its history from Delhi, from Macaulay's children, from those who in the Nehruvian age, he believes, whitewashed history, and didn't tell the little subaltern histories. I could add a number of other names, Suhail Dev, who took on, the Ghazdis. There are many others whose names come out. Is that true somewhere? Or do you believe he's taking an extreme position and going to the extent where now I read Maharana Pratap actually defeated Akbar in the Battle of Haldigadi, which is a plain lie, but it suits a particular form of history writing.
So this is precise. I'm with Vikram halfway. That is much of what he said in the first half of his response.
I don't know if that particular thing is a plain lie or not, but if at all it is a plain lie, it's unfortunate because, and that's been a criticism of Hindutvasis from my side as well, कि British कहने से पहले कास्टिज्म नहीं था, ये चुतिया बोलने का क्या जरूरत है, महाभारत में न्यूक्लियर बम था, ये बोलने का क्या जरूरत है. Even Desai Deepak had said this in one speech before he had written the book India That Is Bharat. Okay, we have so many actual facts. Why are you wasting everyone's time with the lies then? That's also done by some Rantak Pakko in some other states, of course.
I agree totally with, and I have myself in my own way expressed the same concern that there's a whole lot of Indian history we've not been able to reclaim. I studied in Bombay, Calcutta, and Delhi, and I didn't learn a line about the Vijayanagar Empire, and even less about the Cholas, the Pallavas, and so on.
This weak-ass argument is important to respond to because this was being hurled to me by a proud Hindu smarta on Twitter. And his argument is that everyone in Kolkata sucks distinctly and everyone in the villages of West Bengal is distinctly awesome for the weird reason that they are not woke like Kolkata people. They don't understand the trajectory and gradual movement of an idea from different countries to then other countries to then the cities of those countries, then to the villages. Okay, so the reason Kolkata is weak and the Bengalis of Assam are not is because Bengal has more prosperity and therefore we are more aligned with education and stuff and education system, which is basically incentivizes being weak as you say. But the only reason you are not weak as is not because of your credit. The only reason wokeism did not reach the villages of Bengal is because they are so far removed from the mainstream education system, which is why they are jobless, which is why they need to depend on Lokir Bhandar, which is why they need to become Trinamool's Gundas. If Trump had not won, if BJP had not come to power, if the old world was still going on, within 2025-26, you would see blue-haired hijras in every village household. in both in Bengali Hindu families of Assam and in every village all across West Bengal. Okay, it's not a credit that you are not weak as. You just did not reach there. We saved you before it reached you.
As Vikram points out, the smallest dynasties in Delhi, we learned by heart their dates. So there is certainly a Delhi-centric vision of Indian history teaching. But on the last part of what Vikram said, I have a profound disagreement. I think that what we have to look at is that when we came to independence, we really did not choose to be a mirror image of Pakistan. Pakistan used history to forge this rather intolerant idea. I've met Pakistanis who are horrified to realize that...
उनका भी पूरा ही तो jingoism है, बांग्लादेश का भी पूरा ही jingoism है, all those Bengalis, proud Bengali ethnic identity वाला Bangladeshis बालचिराटी बांध रहे हैं. तो the problem is, then comes the problem of fundamentals. हमारा fundamentals बढ़िया है, we can do with jingoism up until class 8. Pakistan can't afford to do it.
History they read. There is even an excellent book by the Pakistani historian comparing the history that was taught in Indian schools up to the 70s and what was taught in Pakistani schools. Where in Pakistan, it was all about hatred of Hindus, the glorious 5,000-year history of Islam in India, etc., etc. And essentially a denial of any syncretism. Whereas in India, history, and I know you don't fully approve of this, but history was pressed into the nation-building project, the service of nation-building. And so there was a...
Service of nation-building. Okay, this is an admission from Shashi Tharoor. Okay, yes, we fucked up history education to do nation building in our way of nation building, where Hindus suffer from inferiority complex. Only Hindu kids suffer from inferiority complex, nobody else. Nation building means learning about Lodi dynasty, not Vijayanagar Empire. And incidentally, nation building means not knowing about Dara Shikoh, knowing about Aurangzeb. क्या अजीब nation building है भाई ये?
Desire to elide over some of the more unpleasant details, destruction of temples, some of the horrors that happened, while at the same time stressing on the commonalities, the cooperation, the harmony that also featured throughout the same periods. And I think that was a laudable objective in a country like ours. First of all, unlike Pakistan, we were a democracy. Second, unlike Pakistan, we were a much more pluralistic society.
Why?
We lived together, people.
Why? What are the fundamentals of Pakistan versus the fundamentals of ours?
The various differences, and we didn't feel, I shouldn't say we, I was a kid myself at the time, the nation didn't feel that accentuating remembered divisions would have been the right way to go if you're knitting a nation together. And to my mind, that was actually the right choice. Today, what's happening is we are scratching at wounds that had actually healed, and you're reopening, and fresh sort of drops of blood are emerging from scars that should have been allowed to heal. Let sleeping dogmas lie would have been my preferred option, but unfortunately,
it should have been allowed to heal. You did not let it heal by not letting us know about Dara Shikoh.
This is where we're going.
That might have been the case, Dr. Tharoor, I think, in the immediate decades after independence. But I think, have the wounds really healed? That's also the question. This, as I said...
Are we allowing them to heal, Vikram?
Well, I mean, sometimes just talking the truth, Ubuntu and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which... South Africa did, of course, the victims and perpetrators, they were alive, and so they could come face to face. But I think it's a...
And it failed, by the way.
Civilizational wound and a civilizational victim. I'll just give one example. I mean, we were the greatest, universities in the world, the Oxfords and Princetons of the world in Vikramshila, Takshashila, Nalanda. And when Nalanda was, vandalized, books burned for 1 year, they say. There's so much of manuscripts and books by this bigoted Bakhtiyar Khilji. Today, if you go out of Nalanda, the ruins, the town is Bakhtiyarpur. The station there is Bakhtiyarpur station. In which country of the world
nation
will
building.
The person who actually desecrated your temple of knowledge be actually valorized? And also, by doing this, I think somewhere we're putting the...
And by the way, Hindutwadis are going on talking about Nalanda all day as a matter of pride. Meanwhile, Navayani Buddhists are saying that Hindus did genocide of Buddhists every now and then.
Of these invasions on the neck of a young Indian Muslim man or woman who is not responsible for the invasions of Ghazni, Gori, Aurangzeb, and Tipu Sultan and all these. If, like in the morning, Mr. Arif Muhammad Khan was telling you, Rajdeep, that a Muslim need not represent a Muslim in parliament or assembly. Similarly, you need not have an icon created for the community who belongs to the same community. You can have anybody else. But even if you want to have, Muslim icons for the community, you have a range of others, from Rahim to Kabir to Raskhan to Sant Shishunal Sharif to APJ Abdul Kalam to Mr. Arif Muhammad Khan. There's so many others. Why would you assume that talking about the atrocities of Aurangzeb or Tipu Sultan or Ghazni is going to make the Indian Muslim feel very, bad about? Just 2 days back, you had Anas Haqqani who put out a tweet celebrating the fact that, they went to the shrine of the Mazar of Ghazni, Mahmud Ghazni, and also gloated over the fact that he crushed the Somnath idol. So are we not doing in some way putting that same seed of separatism, that we are trying to whitewash these invaders only so that you feel nice and you feel integrated into the society. I don't think that.
Is it about whitewashing or is it about demonization? The moment a road is named after Aurangzeb or
तो अगर हम ब्रिटिश इंपीरियलिज्म को, कॉलोनियलिज्म को गाली दे सकते हैं, तो फिर सेटलर कॉलोनियलिज्म बाई मुस्लिम किंग्स को भी गाली दे सकते हैं, जिनको इरफान हबीब बोलता है रेडर्स.
you've got a city like Aurangabad, immediately remove it. So you're moving from whitewashing history, as you call it whitewashing that was going on, to now deliberately looking for those figures through whom you can demonize a community. So we seem to be moving from one extreme to the other extreme.
Vikram, one second on that one, because it's a very...
Because those are the people, those are the only people whom that community and our education system thrust down upon our throats.
Important point. When this thuggish group called the Hindu Sena recently defaced some road signs, it was no longer about what a particular ruler did, right? So you want Aurangzeb Road renamed for the same reason you'd want Bakhtiyarpur renamed, and I understand that. But Akbar, I mean, there couldn't have been a greater example.
Chitor ka Ghazi put up a mountain of skulls
of the kind of ideal king in that particular period of time. And his was defaced. So the only thing that mattered is that he was Muslim. So they came and defaced the signs for Akbar Road. And I said, what do they even understand about history? What are they doing? So when you ask, rightly, why is today's Muslim feeling offended when Ghazni or Gori are denounced? The answer is because it is instrumentalized to demonize them today. You talk to Muslims who have absolutely no affinity for Ghazni or Gori, but they're the ones being aggressed. After all, when some poor fellow is walking down the street and he's beaten within an inch of his life and told to say Jai Shri Ram, that's not my Hindu dharma, Vikram. And that's also not what building a democratic society in India can possibly be about.
Which is why I said, I think the wounds haven't healed. And it's so easy to bring these out. So a truth and reconciliation commission where we set all this, as I said, world over, history.
No, commissions can't do this. Commissions can't achieve this. It has to be organic.
It offers these spaces where people can.
Commissions can't especially happen in a country like India. Commission में क्या 4-5 हिंदू को बिठा देंगे. Like Sitaram Goel was writing in How I Become a Hindu. KL Advani ने अचानक से स्टेज में बोल दिया कि you give us Ram Mandir, we will forgive every other temple. So Sitaram Goel says that Ram Mandir sort of became a play toy कि ये एक खिलौना हमको दे दो और कुछ नहीं चाहिए, एक खिलौना. तो कोई जाके कुछ ना कुछ में रिकंसाइल करके आएगा, कोई बाकी सोसाइटी उसको भाव ही नहीं देगा. इट हैज टू बी ऑर्गेनिक, इट हैज टू बी विथ दिस गाली गलौज देके एकदम एक टाइम में थक जाएंगे. एक साइड मान लेगा कि हाँ हमारे साइड में गलत लोग थे और जो उन लोगों को हम हीरो मानते थे वो लोग भोसरी वाले थे, हमारे साइड में बेटर लोग है जिसको हम आइडल बना सकते हैं, एंड देन वी कैन मूव ऑन ओनली आफ्टर दैट.
And talk these uncomfortable truths, heal from it, learn from past mistakes, and move on. I think we have not made peace with our past, and that is why it keeps resurfacing every now and then as a cancerous growth from
no,
the
but whose
politics.
truth? Whose truth? The question is whose truth? Let's take a look at Savarkar, for example. Who is now being reclaimed in a way after having been possibly demonized by the Congress Nehruvian elite when you all were in power. Who decides who is the real Savarkar? Is the Savarkar the freedom fighter, as some would like to see him? Or is he a Hindutvavadi leader? Is he someone who called Gaurakshaks fools and spoke out against untouchability? Or is he this iconoclastic figure who has to be only seen as an anti-Muslim leader? Whose truth? Shashi Tharoor's truth? Vikram Sampath's truth? Whose truth?
My truth is a combination of all that you said, Raj, because these are complex figures. They are a bit of all of that.
But the truth is, our politicians reduce them to black and white caricatures.
No, I think in all fairness, Vikram has done a good job of trying to draw in his 2 volumes and rather hefty volumes, we've seen them, a very complex portrait in which he has been, some would say, very generous to the first half of Savarkar's life and perhaps not critical enough of the second half. But he's painted it all. It's all there. And though I haven't read every single word because that would take a year.
I didn't realize exactly how big the Savarkar, 2-volume Savarkar is by Vikram Sampath. How many of you all own that set? I have only seen pictures of it, obviously. So a Hindutvadi friend of my uncle recently gifted it to my commie uncle, okay, with the hope that he reads it someday. He hasn't read it. He hasn't even opened the cover and stuff. And I saw it in his home a few days back. It's about this big. It's almost basically bigger than Tipu Sultan's book, of course. And yes, so Biharis vote for Tolamul. Yes, Tolamul is winning only on the votes of Biharis, no? Yes. Baralak, Hindu, Bengali in detention camp. Trinamool wins on the votes of Biharis. Mathematics में क्या लिख के आए थे? Ask for a refund from your maths teacher. Or did he not teach you good maths because he was not Bengali?
into it, and it's a terrific work in terms of trying to reclaim for today's generation a person who, as you say, has only been depicted in one total caricature as this great nationalist hero, or perhaps total caricature as this craven supplicant for British mercy. Who then essentially lived on a British pension for many years afterwards. And these two contrasting images mean that for some of us, it was very difficult to understand why Savarkar's portrait should be in Parliament at all, and that too opposite that of Mahatma Gandhi. Whereas what Vikram has depicted, particularly the early years, up to about the time that he gets sent off to the Andamans, to that cellular jail, which I have visited. It's certainly not a salubrious place. Up to that time, he was really a hero. As somebody, I think it was Manu Pillai in his review of Vikram's book, said if like Bhagat Singh, he had been hanged instead of sent off to exile and survived, might we not be hailing him today as a hero like Bhagat Singh?
It's not entirely correct though, because again, I recently found the 1967 Bengali encyclopedia, and there's a paragraph on Savarkar, only good things. What a great revolutionary he was and stuff. So the vilification of Savarkar resumed, I think, after the Ram Mandir Andolan, and it had gone on in the 50s, of course, but in between he became Veer Savarkar.
It's a subsequent year, the invention of Hindutva philosophy and the bigotry he showed, the involvement in the mentoring Nathuram Godse and up there, all of these things that have cast a shadow over what Savarkar represents.
No, but can you look at these figures who've traversed decades as complex figures, or do we tend to look at them as black and white figures? Even Bhagat Singh, let's be honest, Bhagat Singh was never close.
So what all Bengali identity did you learn at Saint Stephen Goswami Vidya Mandir?
To anything remotely connected to Hindutvavadi politics. And yet today,
he was a communist.
He was a communist. He was a communist, but today, but today Bhagat Singh is appropriated by the Indian right. Subhash Chandra Bose, who was a socialist, is appropriated by the Indian right. Mahatma Gandhi, you appropriate.
Everyone was socialist, bhai. Even Savarkar's economic views were socialist. So it wasn't a proven fact in the 40s and 50s that socialism is a disaster. So
appropriate, and you appropriate Savarkar. Both together, you want to appropriate every leader, then give the truth.
I don't know who's you here, because as I said, I don't belong to any political party, fortunately.
You've been positioned at the right of the stage.
That's by design.
I'm happy to be the centrist.
No, but go ahead.
But see, I mean, there are many facets to a person like Savarkar, who's very, very complicated figure. I've dealt in detail about those so-called petitions, that they were not mercy petitions, that his pension that he was receiving is something that that many other revolutionaries whose degrees was taken away were given by the British. The very fact that the British never trusted him, if he had become a stooge, they would have co-opted him. He was a very useful fellow who was trained in law in London. He would have been a part of the Viceroy's Council. Now, from a 5-year captivity in Ratnagiri after his release from Andamans, every time his petition came up for a review, the British said, we don't trust this man, because he had these underground networks with Bhagat Singh, with Chandrasekhar Azad, with Durga Bhabhi, with Sachindranath Sanyal, Raj Bihari Bose, all of them. So from 5 years, the term actually ended to 13 long years. That itself showed that the British never trusted him, and he was not a stooge as is made out to be. And also his role in the...
also agreed upon by Bakle and another Marathi historian, Fadke, who also is not a Savarkar, right? And yet says that the mercy petition argument has no legs to stand on. He was not writing those mercy petitions to escape from the British. He was writing those mercy petitions to come out of the jail as soon as possible and then fuck the British again.
Assassination of Gandhiji, time and time again, the courts have, honorably exonerated him. And when the highest court, the Supreme Court, exonerates someone, I think for political purposes, it is unfair to keep on putting that albatross on him. But be that as it...
There's a new book out that does exactly that with new research.
Well, maybe.
With,
but then, Dr. Tharoor, I mean, for 1.5 years, the Supreme Court appointed an amicus curiae, and someone of the stature of Justice Bobde, the former CJI, and Justice Nageshwar Rao went through the Mahatma Gandhi trial papers, the Justice Jivanlal Kapoor Commission report, and gave out a statement in 2018, just 3 years ago, that Savarkar's role in Gandhiji's assassination is not something that is up for review, and the courts have settled it. So I think somewhere we should put, dogs to sleep there, as you said. But, the fact, Rajdeep, is have these discussions. Today, we're able to have this mainstream discussion on Savarkar. But in the 50s and 60s, I keep talking about this several times, someone of the eminence of Pandit Hridaynath Mangeshkar, who was in All India Radio. Savarkar was also a prolific Marathi poet. He wrote extensively in Marathi, Sagra, Pran, Talmadala, and Jayostute, and all of that. So this poem which he tuned, Sagra, Pran, Talmadala, which Lataji, Ashaji, others sang, for which he got a show cause notice, asking, why have you tuned this man's, why have you tuned this? And Mangeshkarji gave this 2-line reply saying, good poet, good poem, reason enough to tune, but he lost his job for doing this. So you make someone a persona non grata, you don't even have a discussion on that person, and we talk of intolerance today. So, this culture, cancel culture of anybody who doesn't fall in this mainstream narrative is a traitor, doesn't belong to the nationhood. I think that is a very problematic piece. And Bhagat Singh too. Bhagat Singh published Savarkar's book on 1857, the 4th edition. In his jail diaries, the Hindu Padpadashahi of Savarkar are noted down extensively. He's written eulogizing articles on Savarkar in the Matwala newspaper that Bhagat Singh brought out. So this connections between the revolutionaries, I think, is so understudied. That's another fault line in our history, where we have a very simplistic, linear, monochromatic narrative.
Another thing that was first talked about by Sanjeev Sanyal and written about by Deepak in India, Bharat, Pakistan.
A Richard Attenborough film of how India won her freedom. I think there are multiple stories, multiple narratives, multiple heroes and heroines, and the time has come in this Amrit Mahotsav that we kind of revisit those other voices and other which are dying to be, I think, told and heard.
Respond to that, Dr. Tharoor, that the years of the Congressification of our history, when the Marxists sort of,
Nation building
dictated what our history should be, is where distortion and, dare I say, intolerance also crept in. That there was an unwillingness to read possibly other multiple versions that perhaps existed of these same complex figures. For the longest time, even Bose was never really done justice in a way by the so-called Congress historians of the 50s and 60s.
Well, I'm not sure that it's fair in a thriving democracy to imply that every historian followed a particular line dictated by the ruling party. I don't believe that was true. I think that, in fact...
Who didn't follow the line? Where was that historian? उसने कौन सा बुक लिखा जो कि हमको पढ़ाया गया? क्या अजीब आर्गुमेंट है ये?
In some way, some of the critiques of the Congress from the left were actually even sharper than perhaps what today we're seeing from the right. So I don't think it was a monochromatic approach. Having said that, I'm not going to speak in favor of intolerance. I wasn't aware of this episode of Pandit Hridaynath Mangeshkar, and I feel sorry that such a choice should have been made. No one is defending any of the excesses of the past, but this whataboutery is not a way of responding seriously to a discussion about today and tomorrow. You know, you talk about 2002 riots and what about 1984? Both were bad, yeah? But let's not acknowledge they were both bad, and let's talk about how do we prevent either from happening in 2021. That's the way in which we have to look at history if you are interested in building a modern, progressive, democratic nation.
You're saying there's no space for whataboutery in here.
And that argument isn't even a very good counter argument. This is a problem with bad debating skills वाले हिंदुत्ववादीस के 2002 के response में 1984 क्यों लाए? First of all, 2002 का response है कि भाई that was a retaliation. तुम अगर जो पहला action है, जो trigger point है, उसको like so many of my friends when they debate me on 2002. I have to inform them that it's a retaliation. They have never heard of the name Sabarmati Express. तो retaliation है, पहले ये acknowledge करो भोसरी के. मानोगे ही नहीं कि वो retaliation है. हाँ, retaliation हुआ, उसमें over correction हुआ, उसमें हम तो debate कर सकते हैं. Retaliation acknowledge ही नहीं कर रहे हो, तो हम क्यों 1984 बोले? पहली बात. Second of all, 1984 में पूरा देश घूम के पंजाबियों को ढूंढ के मारा जा रहा था, सिख्स को ढूंढ के. 2002 में वैसा नहीं हुआ, उल्टा उसका रिटेलिएशन इधर उधर हो गया. 1991-2 वो रिटेलिएशन भी हुआ हिंदूज के साथ अलग अलग स्टेट्स में. और मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली आफ्टर 2002 हाउ मेनी मुस्लिम्स लेफ्ट गुजरात?
In our history
that's
debate.
Cheap debating, point scoring. You know, what about this? What about that? Okay, we are censoring people now. You censored people ago. We are arresting people now. You are arresting the emergency. Hey, those arguments are not what the country ought to be about. They're not about what we should aspire to as Indians to see in our country. I am all for reclaiming forgotten voices, as Vikram says, on all sides, I might add.
How did they end up being forgotten? If as you said that the historians were not monochromatic, there weren't all historians who were just Nehruvian or Marxist, there were all kinds of historians, then how did they become forgotten voices?
And I think that one of the very important things that you're overlooking in the slight demonization of Congress era history writing is the very fact that people like Bhagat Singh, Netaji Bose and others were honored, maybe insufficiently according to some, were honored sufficiently that today we still speak of them with reverence. And these are people who obviously were demonized by the Brits up to 1947. And when you look at the fact that of course, Netaji has lots of roads and stadia and so on named after him everywhere. Bhagat Singh is an icon that everyone honors today. People don't realize he died in his early 20s. He was hanged at 21 or 22. And yet today he is one of the best known Punjabis of all time in India. And somebody who is revered, rightly so, for the extraordinary intellect he had and the contribution he made to articulating India's aspirations for freedom. So it's not as if there was only one narrative. But let's agree, let's concede the point we need to allow other voices to come forward. What are these voices saying? And that's where I want to, if the voices are saying, you know, Muslims were bad 500 years ago, and therefore today's Muslims will have to suffer for it, and we will do this and we'll do that, and we will change this and we'll change that, then I have a problem. I mean, I want to say, what are you doing to today's India? Why can't we focus on making a better India for all Hindus, Muslims.
Why didn't you do that by teaching all those voices which became forgotten in the interest of nation building? This is a building of a different kind.
Christians a lot, instead of fighting these old battles. When Vikram says that the wounds have not healed, you're not allowing them to heal. That's my problem. Let them heal. Let them heal. I remember a conversation with Shimon Peres, the former president of Israel, in Davos. This was more than 20 years ago. We were having dinner. It was a casual conversation. Now that he's passed away, I can reveal it. And he said to me, I hate history. I said, what? He said, history is my subject. What are you telling me, sir? He said, no, I hate history. I don't want my grandson to study history. I said, what? He says, the history only is going to make him dwell in the past, in real or imagined wrongs. I want him to focus on the future. Let him study technology. Let him study computers. I don't want him to study history. No, this is from Israel.
Fair enough. That's just one side doing in India, not the other side.
Which is steeped in history. But I'm just saying, here is the kind of attitude that a modern, forward-looking state is seeking to encourage, and we, having encouraged it, having talked about science and IITs and AIMS and the race to space and all of that, we are now once again slipping back into using history as a battle axe to fight the imagined wrongs of
you know, for example,
I'd lose my job, Dr. Tharoor, if history doesn't
you
become
won't lose your job. No, I wonder whether
history as history you should write. I'll read you.
No,
but history for today's political misuse is what I have a problem.
No, I wonder whether
history has always been the handmaiden of the ruler. It's not.
And to be fair to Dr. Shashi Tharoor, even after this debate, 2 years after this debate, he wrote the testimonial for Tipu Sultan.
Nothing very special or unique that's happening now or today. I think time and time again, it's a victor who writes the story. And that African saying that goes that
Chinua Achebe is famous.
Yes, yeah.
Until the lions have their own
storyteller, it will always glorify the.
No, but look at it, Vikram. Look at it, Vikram. Dr. Tharoor, August 14th. In this Amrit Mahotsav year, the Prime Minister of the country says it should be looked at as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. Do we want to rekindle the scars of the past, or do we want to look ahead?
तो अभी तो इजराइल का एग्जांपल दे रहा था. Israel doesn't say never again.
I mean, this is where it comes to it. Whether our politicians of the time are selectively interpreting history to suit their political ends.
Rajdeep, I think it was philosopher George Santana who had said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And so 2 million people dead, 15 million or so displaced, one of the largest displacements in human history, in at least the recent times. As I said, I don't know the political motivations of what might happen of that. But world over, when you have Holocaust museums, are they all celebrating the Holocaust? when in Israel,
or living in the past?
Germany, or in the US, when people go to the Holocaust museum and see those horrors, even now, of what happened in those gas chambers, are they celebrating Hitler? Or is it a reminder that history gives to you that these excesses should never happen again? It should never be committed again. So I think
that's a historian speaking, not a politician.
I said, luckily, fortunately, I'm not.
Dr. Tharoor, you're a politician. Let's be honest. What is Partition Remembrance Day about? Remembering the horrors of partition.
Well, I think I was probably the first to tweet against this declaration by the Prime Minister.
Then tweet against Israelis for having Holocaust museums all over the world.
That should be marked as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day, because it seemed to me targeting specifically.
Why do we need to learn about Hitler then? Move forward in life. See what good things Jewish people are doing. Let's not study about Hitler. Why do we know Aurangzeb was a great king and at the same time know that Hitler was a fucking asshole?
These healed wounds and scratching them. But having said that, I'm all in favor of memorializing what happened in Partition. There's a very good Partition museum in Amritsar. Let's have more. I mean, I've talked about memorializing the atrocities of colonialism. Not because today I want us to go and revolt against the Brits. That's over.
Joto dosh colonialism ghosh.
Well, that's history. But we should understand, as I've said in talking about my book, I've said we must definitely forgive, but we must not forget. Now, the problem is, here we have people...
अरे तो जानने तो दो पहले. अरे हम बांग्ला बोलते हैं. इतना रफ लैंग्वेज आ रहा है दिमाग में कि मैं बांग्ला में शिफ्ट करने का मन कर रहा है कि बड़ा जाने ही ना ले ना कि फॉरगिव करबे. तो first let people know. Then they will come to terms with it. Then they will some people will forgive, some people won't forgive. You don't even let them know what to forgive. How will they forgive the thing that they don't know happened? What the fuck?
Who are not only prepared not to forget, who even want to revive memories, real or imagined, of what people have forgotten, and then instead of forgiving, want to punish the supposed descendants of those who perpetrated those wrongs.
That's your fear.
You cannot correct the wrongs of yesterday by creating new wrongs for tomorrow.
But Dr. Tharoor, if you want people to not to forget the horrors of colonialism, and you write a book about the darkness of that period, would you also encourage historians then to write about the period of medieval age or the age of the so-called invasions that took place during the Mughal rule or previously during the sultans, that there were these horrors that were committed, and you should.
Yeah. Now Rajiv Sardesai also pretends to know all about the horrors. So Rajiv Sardesai knew all about horrors. Shashi Tharoor knew all about horrors. Only we didn't know all about horrors. ये क्या? ये secret education देता है इन लोगों को क्या क्या? ये देखो, पार्टी ऑफिस में आओ बच्चे, आओ देखो, ये किया था इस्लामिक किंग्स ने, ठीक है? तुम जान के रखो, किसी को मत बताओ, हम पढ़ाएंगे भी नहीं, मगर 30 साल बाद जब जहाज डूबेगा तब जाके बोल देना कि तुमको पता था.
Should not forget them. Would you say that one is acceptable and one is not? Or would you say, forget one, because today if you forget one, you'll open up new scars, but don't forget what the colonials did, because there are no scars to be opened up there.
Dr. Tharoor famously argued for reparations from the British. We don't have reparations to take from Muhammad Ghazni, but the least...
We have reparations to take from some people. I need A. Rahman's Rolly Seaboard, guys, as reparations for jizya.
Reparation we can do for our national consciousness is to remember this. But
you can't remember. You can't remember it. You can't remember it by demolishing a mosque and building a temple.
You're again bringing politics to me. So 80 million was the...
How do you know? Who told you that it can't be done that way?
Fall in the subcontinent's population between 1000 CE and 1525 with the end of the Delhi Sultanate. So these 80 million people, largely Hindus in this subcontinent, they just didn't drop down dead. Today we still have the Hindu Kush mountains. What is that Hindu Kush? It was a mountain of human skulls, of Hindu slaughter. So these are, and from 40,000 to 60,000 is the numbers spoken of the temples desecrated. Now you also have condescendingly Western historians who come down to us and tell us that Aurangzeb actually protected more temples than he demolished. And so he was a very, very, nice guy and so on. We know these kind of condescending historians who come and teach us what to be tolerant about and intolerant about. So obviously Hitler also could have probably massacred a lot more Jews. He didn't do it, so was he a saint for that? So I think these kind of perversions and it's, I think, an intellectual crime to subvert or subordinate the truth to political considerations, which happens on both sides. And to tell the truth as it is with a group of non-ideologically, leaning historians, I think is the need of the hour to ensure that the story of India finally gets told to the future generations.
Why can't it be told by multiple voices, Vikram?
अरे multiple voices की माँ की 2022 में multiple voices याद आया ना? So let me just digress a little. Yes, I do want to buy that Haken Continuum fingerboard someday. I can't afford it right now, and I can't afford the Rolly Seaboard as well. So I hope I get that as part of jizya reparations. But yes, the first time I came across the Haken Continuum fingerboard was at some live DVD by Dream Theater, because Jordan Rudess uses that extensively in some specific songs. Then A.R. Rahman's application of Haken Continuum fingerboard, man, you have to listen to it at Berklee College of Music's live performance with A.R. Rahman, where A.R. Rahman was invited to get felicitated and get the honorary PhD. There, he played the Bombay theme song, the entire Bansuri intro on the Continuum fingerboard. Oh, what a performance.
Can't we have? So you have a Gyanendra Pandey writing about example after example that he's dug up of Hindu-Muslim cooperation during these periods. Sure. And by all means, also have a historian cataloging all the misdeeds and temple destruction and so on, whoever Sitaram Goyal, if you like. Let them both be there. My point
not
is,
allowed.
No, but at the moment you've got a situation where one point of view is in power and is imposing that point of view in everything from school textbooks in the states where they're ruling, down to the official national, even talking about this Horrors Remembrance Day is a very clear demonization of one community.
On social media, I think this government's so-called supporters would actually castigate the government that they're not doing enough to change the textbooks, because in 7 years in power, and you had a former HRD minister who said we take pride in not a single line of the textbook has been changed. So I don't know what...
for example, one minute. We now have a filmmaker, Mahesh Manjrekar, who wants to make a film on Godse, announces the film on Gandhi Jayanti. And, obviously is sending out a message. You'll have Godse, as a hero trending, as the top trend on social media.
Loonies, Rajni, there are loonies everywhere.
Isn't there a mainstreaming and a normalization of these loonies somewhere? Who is a loony and who is not? Some of these loonies are in power. Some of these loonies are our MPs. How long are we going to call them loonies?
We've had some MPs actually saying they wanted statues of Mahatma Gandhi replaced by statues of Godse. So it's not, Radhi was quite right. There is definitely a mainstreaming of points of view that would not have been considered, respectable to utter even.
No, this is classic strawman skill to hai hi, but you find out the weirdest, most outlandish argument, and then you debate it. That's the definition of strawmans. But the left does it all the time. Even the right does it, of course. Some people on the right to some extent. But I had faced this while debating a friend of mine from presidency. He kept on giving me examples of weird as fuck statements after weird as fuck statements and weird policy positions like destroying Mahatma Gandhi statues and stuff. But my problem was that I had never heard those arguments, just like I had never heard these 2-3 arguments that just now Shashi Tharoor gave. Where does he get these arguments? ये लोग देखते हैं एनडीटीवी में कोई अजीब ऐसे बोलने वाले लोगों को ही बुलाया जाता है टू मेक दैट साइड सीम एब्सोल्युटली इनसेन, और फिर उसको बैठ के डिबेट करते हैं. Me being in right wing, haven't heard these arguments ever, and I've never, of course, advocated these arguments.
Behind closed doors.
But credit where due, I think the Prime Minister himself came out and said he would never forgive the concerned MP from Bhopal who made those statements.
Why?
Whatever.
But she was made an MP before, when she was made an MP, she had already made statements about Godse. My point is, the moment you make her an MP, you're effectively saying it's okay. As long as you can win an election, you can say what you want, you can valorize Godse and demonize Gandhi. But Dr. Tharoor, on the flip side, this is about, at one level, competitive intolerance is about the use of power. Take a look at in your home state of Kerala. Political controversy brewing over the inclusion of the works and thoughts of RSS ideologues like Golwalkar, Savarkar, Deendayal, Upadhyay.
And Balraj Madhok.
And Balraj Madhok. I don't know where Madhok fitted into that. And there's a huge outcry. So the left is equally intolerant. Nobody, why should I not know about Savarkar?
I don't know much about Deendayal Upadhyay, but him being intolerant, I didn't know. Can any right-winger steelman Rajdeep's argument here? Was Deendayal Upadhyay really an intolerant guy? Did he write some evil, insane stuff about Muslims and stuff? Because all I know is that he came up with socialism repackaged with different names.
Savarkar or Golwalkar,
Exactly.
why can't there be history which is with multiple voices, read in an objective manner, non-ideologically? Is that at all possible, or are we too hyper-polarized now to even appreciate it? People, somebody sent me a message when I said that I have Vikram on the show. Oh, he's the person who's whitewashing Savarkar for a new India. So you see, we seem so hyper-polarized at the moment. And he's not even read Vikram.
Barclay ने भी whitewash कर दिया. अब क्या करें? Barclay ने बोला है कि Savarkar was under surveillance from 16. Barclay ने बोला है कि Savarkar was facing heroic challenges and coming out of them with flying colors. Barclay ने बोला है कि Savarkar never did the mercy petition for getting mercy. He was just trying to come out of prison and do his job. And as soon as possible, he went inside the jail, immediately started writing mercy petitions, not after getting fed up with the torture years down the line.
So my point would precisely be this: let's have multiple voices. I supported the proposal to include these RSS ideologues in the syllabus because it is only by reading them and understanding their thinking that you can decide where you stand in relation to them.
Will your party leadership support you on that?
No.
Or you'll be once again ostracized? Look at that bad boy.
No, I've already taken my public stand and I was isolated. But the point
you were isolated by your own party.
But look, I'm somebody who has quoted extensively from Savarkar and Golwalkar in my writings. So how can I deny others the privilege of reading the same sources that I read? From my point of view, I don't agree with them. But it's only by reading them that I know that I don't agree with them. So you cannot and should not deny college students, university students, the right to be exposed to a wide variety of views and come to their own conclusions.
In 2022.
That applies to ideas. That's what education is supposed to be all about. It's to give you the equipment intellectually to discern, according ultimately to your own value choices, if necessary, your own ideology. I believe that
ये सब 2022 में काहे याद आया?
It was wrong, and in the end, they have indeed proscribed those texts. I believe it was wrong to do so, and I have no hesitation in saying I'll stand up for academic freedom and intellectual freedom against even the sort of ideologues on my own side of the fence, because I genuinely believe in having as wide a range of materials, sources, and information. As I said to Vikram earlier, let's have both views about the same period. Let's read them. And that's not just both views. There are multiple views about many periods of Indian history in which there's not just one conclusion. The intelligent reader and the intelligent student should be exposed to and have an opportunity to see what everyone is reading, writing, arguing, and then make their own minds up. But then we'll have a better informed citizen.
But is that possible? I ask you that, you're looking at an ideal situation where academic freedom, intellectual freedom exists, but it doesn't in the hyper-polarized society where people are getting so sharply divided, them versus us. Is it possible? Are we living in an illusory world, Dr. Tharoor, where it is simply not possible anymore?
No, Golwalkar has some controversial comments, but what Deendayal Upadhyay's controversial comment? This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
To have these debates without polarizing society even further.
That's only because the ruling powers and the ruling...
Hello, Solanki, by the way. Welcome to our channel.
Establishments appear to have taken particular sides in this debate. If the government stayed out of the debate, if the government and the ruling party and their entire panoply of power, influence, media influence, all of that comes with it, if they stood back and said, let this be discussed amongst intellectuals, amongst historians, amongst journalists. That, I think, would be fine, and we can have all these views. I would love to read more of Vikram and read more of leftist historians. How does it matter? It's when the government has one point of view that appears to be the one that they are railroading to the consciousness of Indians that everyone gets.
Yeah, imagine leader of opposition traveling alone, chilled out. वो मतलब ठीक है, पैसा क्या है, हाथ की मैल है, ये सब बोल के सिक्योरिटी वेक्यूरिटी नहीं लिया, ऐसे ही ट्रेन में घूम रहे थे, ट्रेन से कोई धक्का मार के फेंक दिया.
Alarmed and says, here, you're polarizing the country.
Sorry to say what about here, but that's exactly what would have been said 25 years ago when you were in power. You see, that's the problem.
I was happily at the UN, so don't say you, but I take your point.
Dr. Tharoor is in a magnificent minority, who believes in this open-mindedness. That, as I said, history is a handmaiden of the ruler. So in the past, when ICHR was created and so on, I spoke about how even during the...
No. If he was really against whitewashing of history or teaching only one kind of history, then he should not have joined Congress. He should have said that, no, I reject this party because you all have done such injustice with history education and stuff, and you all are socialists and stuff. Maybe ठीक है, एक topic के लिए कोई party को reject नहीं कर सकता है, but then he should have criticized that from the get-go. He said that no, it's nation building के लिए है, ठीक है, इसलिए कर दिए थे. He defend पहले कर दिया, उसके बाद संपत को बोल रहा है कि you see all voices must be taught.
British time, you had space for an alternate view. Whereas, post-independence, it's a paradox that we do not have these alternate views to thrive. I mean, careers have been destroyed, fellowships are denied, so many stories like this, only because you didn't toe a particular line. So every dog has its day. So some people are now looking back and saying, it's our time now. You can't grudge them that, saying, now we have to be fair to everybody and so on. Where were these virtues 20, 25 years ago? So now, in fact, as I said, people who are supportive of this government actually berate it for not doing enough to actually bring a civilizational consciousness or statement of history. So, in fact, they get the stick, I think, on both sides.
No, but it's got to be high quality. Let's be honest.
And so,
part of the problem is it's not just about junking the past. It's if you're going to rewrite history. Yeah. Please ensure that you do it with some element of integrity and quality. So I ask you, therefore, between so-called secularizing history and communalizing history, is there a middle ground?
Yes,
that we can find?
Truthifying history, I guess. That is
the
truthifying history.
Truthifying. You're calling it truthifying history.
Truthifying Indian history and let people read what is the truth. However
inconvenient
it is, let us stare it in the face. Let's just get done with it. I think we have a very, very troubled past. And since, as I stated again, since we've not made peace with it, we will keep having these fissures emanating all the time, whether it is in Ayodhya, whether it is in some other place. If we had settled these for good, I think the problems would not arise.
Dr. Tharoor?
In one of my novels, right, I have a character, a foreigner, American, saying to the Indian characters, the problem with your country is you have far too much history for you to be able to consume it. I mean, it's overflowing. You're all busy using history as a battle axe to hit each other.
No, only one side was using it as a battle axe up until 2019, 2020. अब खेल थोड़ा घूम गया है only because of social media, not because of academia. And secondly, yes, it's a good argument in case of India कि अरे भाई कितना पढ़ाए और what about the dark gory details, वो बच्चों को कैसे पढ़ाए? तो which is why my solution is class 8 तक pure heroism and jingoism कि देखो हमारे ancestors कितने बढ़िया थे. उसके बाद हम अगर कोई स्पेशली कोई अगर आर्ट स्ट्रीम में जाना चाहे, हिस्ट्री डिपार्टमेंट में जाना चाहे, फिर हम दोनों ही पढ़ाएंगे कि देखो हाँ बहुत सारे हीरोइज्म था, बहुत सारे युद्ध हमने हारे, हमारे एंसेस्टर्स में बहुत सारे भोसरी वाले थे, ये सब पढ़ाएंगे क्लास 8 के बाद या फिर 10 के बाद, 11, 12 के बाद.
And this character is somebody who's trying to sell a popular beverage in India, and he says, I don't care about your past. I'm only interested in your future and increasing my sales here. You guys should be thinking about the future too. And frankly, I have some sympathy with that point of view. I love reading history. I've enjoyed writing it as an amateur. I don't claim to be a historian as Vikram is. But I would say that history should belong to the past and to multiple understandings of the past. And Vikram says the truth. So if you look selectively at only the rape, the pillage, the destruction of temples, the forced conversions, you have one kind of truth about that period in northern India in particular. If you look only at incident after incident of Hindus going and worshipping, for example, Ghazi Mian in Barech is this fellow who was a Muslim warrior who's revered as a Hindu saint today. You've got people in many parts of India where if there was a natural calamity and a temple was destroyed, the local Muslims would come and rebuild it, and vice versa for a masjid. We've had so many examples like that are also present in our history. If you only look at that selectively, you'll have a different truth. And maybe if you read both sets of accounts, you'll arrive at a third truth. I feel we should let people have their own understandings, provided no one seeks to assert a monopoly of one version of the truth.
That's where I would leave it. Let us let history remain contested for the past, but let us not bring those contests over into the present and thereby compromise our future.
Maybe we should have a film. Maybe we should have a film on Kabir instead of Aurangzeb. Yeah.
No. If your nation building was done by doing one side of the history and the country did not get screwed up according to you, then even this one-sided history, which is done for a different kind of nation building, will also not screw up the country.
Indeed. So
maybe we should have a film on bridge builders rather than a Godse.
Yeah.
There are any number of, have a great film on Vivekanand instead of a film on Godse.
Uh-huh.
Have a film on Kabir instead of Ghazni, but maybe.
Okay, the Muslim lovers in Congress can make a film on Darashiko. I'll go watch it. Hire Anurag Kashyap to do it.
We live in an era whereas in Bajrangi Bhaijaan, the actor says, कि प्यार बांटना बहुत मुश्किल है, नफरत फैलाना बहुत आसान.
औरंगजेब ने इसलिए दाराशिको का गांड मार दिया.
And I just wonder whether even history has got caught in these competitive hatreds of our time. I just wonder.
It has, Rajdeep, and I would agree with Dr. Tharoor there about these multiplicity of views. I've always held, as a historian, that it's that famous poem we read as children, the blind man and the elephant. Each blind man touches one part of the elephant and says the elephant looks like the trunk, the tail, the body, and so on. They're all right and they're all wrong as well. History is that each person looks at one aspect based on either biases or the evidences that are available.
Therefore, class 8 tak pure jingoism.
Available to them and reconstructs the sum of all the parts. So do not deny any part in the false miasma of contemporary politics, contemporary social cohesion, and so on. And as I said, de-hyphenate today's Muslims from these invaders of the past. Make new icons who actually represent that composite culture, who actually represent that peaceful version that you talk of, rather than, actually deny and have this negationism that, Aurangzeb was actually very secular, but,
The way to do that is to go back to the Constitution. The Constitution gives us a roadmap where we can all enjoy our own autonomy and be empowered as citizens of a free democratic republic.
True.
Let's do that and not, in fact, demonize people for what happened centuries before our republic was even born.
Let's leave it there, because we are 75 years into our independence. And 75...
So he's saying he never understood why exposing true history is hatred. It's all based on the majoritarian myth on which everyone operates, and that's why Kaushik Gangopadhyay's book is so important. Okay then. Thank you for joining the live stream, guys. It was a fun conversation. I did a recap of many of these arguments and did a nostalgic trip down memory lane by looking at Deepak's debate of Shashi Tharoor and the most significant defeat Shashi Tharoor has faced, and at the hands of Harsh Madhusudan. And hope we all learned something from these 3 debates. Good morning and good night, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
श्रवरूढं महाभीमं गुणाद्रष्टाम्बरप्रदम् अस्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरां मुक्तकेशीं ललज्जयं पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत्